Chapter 557. Breathe in, breathe in. The green-clothed cultivator's breathing became heavier and heavier. His body even began to tremble slightly. Gu Yu's nervousness, to some extent, was also transmitted to Sumo and the others. Therefore, Sumo's coercion slightly spread out. The coercion of the late stage of breaking the world directly protected Gu Yu and the others, which made them feel a little relieved. Howl, roar. Suddenly, a dragon's roar shook the cave. The time had come. Looking again, the green-clothed cultivator in the cave had slowly raised his head. His clothes and long hair were fluttering without any wind. It was no less than the aura of breaking the world. The green-clothed cultivator had a kind of transcendent temperament. Clatter, clatter. Under the feet of the green-clothed cultivator, the sound of chains rang. He slowly stood up. "Brother Jiu!" Gu Yu and Gu Xing called out in a low voice. However, the green-clothed cultivator did not respond at all. He seemed to not hear Gu Yu and Gu Xing's call and stood up by himself. Clatter. The sound of chains was clear and harsh. Howl. The green-clothed cultivator suddenly looked up to the sky and let out a shocking dragon roar. The 8 dragon souls around him, each with a ferocious face, flew up and down, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Whoosh! Immediately, the power of breaking the world spread out like a tide. Boom! Hua! Inside the cave, the spiritual energy rippled. The light curtain fluctuated violently, as if a substantial curtain was blown by a strong wind. At the same time, the entire underground cave was shaking. The power emitted by the green-clothed cultivator shook everything. On the cave wall, many gravel rolled down. The entire dungeon was shaking. Gu Yu's expression changed slightly. Brother Jiu seemed to be more irritable than before when he woke up this time. However, they were still under the protection of Sumo. However, the green-clothed cultivator seemed to be getting more and more violent. He dodged his feet heavily, as if he wanted to break free from the shackles. Sumo raised his eyebrows. He was considering whether he should make a move. Evil creature! At this time, a shout suddenly came from above their heads. It was the voice of the white-haired granny. Looking again, the light curtain suddenly emitted several rays of light. Crack, crack, in an instant, the brilliance on the light curtain turned into several light whips. Then, they lashed out at the green-robed cultivator. Pa, pa, each whip of light was dozens of feet long. They were all made of break-world power. In truth, each of those whips of light was enough to kill a mid-stage soul-burying realm cultivator. Boom, pa, the first whip of light struck the cyan-robed cultivator's body. Roar of the 8 dragon souls in his body dissipated. The azure-robed cultivator shuddered. However, he completely withstood the first whip. Then, runes lit up beneath his feet. The power of the seal began to suppress him. Boom, pa, pa, the light whips fell like raindrops. The sound of whipping rang out incessantly. In an instant there were hundreds of hits. A faint mist of blood appeared on the azure-robed cultivator's body. He kept roaring and struggling. At that moment, he really was like a divine dragon in the dragon-trapping stance. Ninth brother! Ninth brother! Gu Yu and Gu Xing kept screaming. Tears streamed down their cheeks. However, the green-clothed cultivator turned a deaf ear. He continued to roar and resist, but in the end, he couldn't withstand the power of the seal. Evil creature! Cough! It was still the voice of the white-haired granny. However, she actually coughed twice, which meant that she was also a little powerless. Fortunately, the azure-robed cultivator was gradually suppressed. His roars gradually stopped, and his breathing slowly calmed down. Finally, he was surrounded by a mist of blood. As for him, he was half kneeling and half squatting in the cave. The 8 dragon souls around the azure-robed cultivator seemed to be tired as they quietly hovered around him. The clouds dispersed and the rain stopped. The aura in the entire cave gradually calmed down. Just now, it was as if a huge battle had taken place. Ninth brother! Ninth brother! Gu Yu and Gu Xing shouted again. At that moment, the azure-robed cultivator slowly turned around. His long hair hung down, covering both sides of his face. His exposed face looked as pale as a sheet of paper. However, his eyes were abnormally bright. However, there was a hint of unwillingness hidden in the depths of his eyes. Gan Tianqing. Sumo and Yuwuji looked at each other. They were certain that the azure-robed cultivator was the divine dragon pavilion master of the Xiantian pavilion, Gan Tianqing. The number 1 divine dragon in the Xiantian pavilion. Gan Tianqing was half human and half dragon. He was an extremely special existence with ancient secret technique. He had the supreme secret technique, the Divine Dragon 9 Transformations. The Divine Dragon 9 Transformations was a body of 9 dragons. If a dragon did not die, it could exist forever. In a sense, Gan Tianqing had 9 lives. Back then, apart from Qing Mozi, he was the number 1 in the entire Xiantian pavilion. Moreover, Gan Tianqing was brave and resourceful. He was a rare figure. In the Battle of Immortal Town, the second soul of the Plum Blossom sprite was destroyed by him. Gan Tianqing was definitely a dragon among men. Ninth brother! Ninth brother! Guyu was still calling. Don't shout! Don't shout! The azure-robed cultivator looked up at Guyu and the others, then panted. His tone was still filled with hostility. Ninth brother, do you know me? Guyu said with tears in her eyes. Ninth brother, little girl, who are you? The azure-robed cultivator's eyes were blank. Guyu and Gu Xing's eyes were gloomy. What's his name? Sumo asked Guyu. Gu Qingyang, Guyu said. N. Sumo nodded, then turned to face Gu Qingyang and said in a deep voice, Gu Qingyang, do you know me? Sumo's back was facing Guyu and the others. At this time, his eyes had turned completely black. Those were demon eyes. Sumo's eyes were like bottomless black holes. Sumo's question sounded like an ordinary question to Guyu and the others. However, those words sounded completely different to Gu Qingyang's ears. Boom, boom. Sumo's words were like a thunderclap, his voice booming. At the same time, Gu Qingyang seemed to see something different in Sumo's eyes. The starlight was bright and endlessly gorgeous. It was a colorful world. Galaxy. A word suddenly popped up in Gu Qingyang's mind. At the same time, the 8 dragon souls outside his body couldn't help but slightly stagnate. At that moment, they all seemed to feel a certain familiar aura. Who are you? Gu Qingyang asked Sumo in a relatively calm tone. Sumo couldn't help but smile slightly. Gu Qingyang, I'm the person who came to receive you. I will wake you up completely, and you won't have to suffer the pain of struggling every day. Ha ha, ha. Gu Qingyang stood up straight and couldn't help but sneer at the sky. His face was devoid of blood. The seal that had lasted for more than 30,000 years had consumed a lot of his effort. I'm already awake. Why would I wake up? Gu Qingyang stared at Sumo. Unfortunately, the feeling just now was fleeting, because Sumo had taken away his demon eyes. At the moment, he just wanted Gu Qingyang to calm down. Your soul hasn't woken up. Sumo smiled faintly. You still have 8 souls that can't return. But I can make you fully awaken. I'll let you know who you are. Who am I? Gu Qingyang raised his eyebrows suddenly. He moved his eyes away from Sumo and then shifted them to Guyu and Gu Xing. Brother Jiu. Brother Jiu. Guyu and Gu Xing were calling out. However, Gu Qingyang frowned and shook his head. He seemed to be familiar with those 2 girls, but he couldn't remember them at all. At this time, Sumo had already turned around. She looked at Guyu with a smile and said, Miss Guyu, I want to see your master. Chapter 558. Meet the Patriarch? Guyu naturally understood what Sumo's words meant. After meeting Gu Qingyang, Sumo asked to meet the Patriarch again, which meant something. Senior Su, are you sure you can save my 9th brother? Guyu asked. 90% sure. Suemo nodded. Good. Guyu was overjoyed. At the same time, she was not a sloppy person, so she immediately said, "Then let's go up, and then I'll ask my father to come out of seclusion." Finally, Guyu looked back at Gu Qingyang. "Ninth brother, I'll come again. Dragon God, wait a few days." Sumo turned back and cupped her fists at Gu Qingyang with a smile. Yuwuji also gave Gu Qingyang a deep look. In the Galaxy era, only 2 pavilion masters of the mysterious Heaven Pavilion had advanced to the Eternal Realm. The one that Qing Mo often talked about was Gon Tianqing. Because Gon Tianqing's temperament was very similar to that of the Azure Demon. He was calm and insufferably arrogant. He had both the pen and the sword. Gu Qingyang looked at them and did not say anything. Ever since meeting Sumo, he had become much calmer. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged in the cave, no longer anxious. However, he looked at Sumo, Guyu, and the others and did not say anything. His thoughts were still extremely chaotic. This was because his cycle of reincarnation was different from the others, and there were even different voices in his mind. Guyu and the others returned the way they came. After a while, they arrived at the courtyard from before. At this moment, the white-haired granny and the eunuch in red were sitting cross-legged in the courtyard. The aura of the entire courtyard was completely different from before. This was because Gu Qingyang, who was underground, was no longer in a state of deep sleep, so they had to be vigilant and prepared at all times. They had been living like this for more than 30,000 years. It could be said that they were physically and mentally exhausted. There was a trace of blood at the corner of the white-haired granny's mouth. In fact, as time passed, they became more and more powerless. Just now, in order to suppress Gu Qingyang, the white-haired granny was already injured. They didn't know how much longer the grand sealing formation could last. However, they knew that Gu Qingyang was getting more and more difficult to control. Ancestors. Gu Yu and Gu Xing greeted them again. The white-haired granny looked at them coldly and didn't say anything. However, the look in her eyes said it all. "Didn't you make a wasted trip?" This kind of thing had happened countless times in the past 30,000 years. She was already disheartened and had no hope of saving Gu Qingyang. "How is it?" The one who spoke was the white-haired eunuch. In fact, he also believed that it was impossible. However, he still opened his mouth and asked, "Senior Su can cure my brother?" Gu Yu replied, The 2 old men were taken aback. "Is that true?" The white-haired granny asked in a deep voice. At the same time, she didn't look at Gu Yu, but at Sumo. She found it hard to believe. This was because even Gu Yu's unfathomable master couldn't cure Gu Qingyang. "Of course." Sumo smiled faintly. "Fellow cultivator." The white-haired eunuch spoke again. He didn't usually like to talk. "We old farts have been guarding this place for 30,000 years. Originally, we had no hope for anything. We planned to leave this old bag of bones in this courtyard. Now, you say that you can cure that child's illness?" "I can." Sumo confirmed again. "Who are you, Your Excellency?" the white-haired eunuch asked. "I'm from Xianmeng," Sumo replied with a smile. He didn't say that he was the city lord of the chaotic gods continent, but directly said that he was from Xianmeng. In this way, he was preparing to subdue the Gu family. The white-haired eunuch didn't ask who Sumo was, because that wasn't important. Then, he smiled meaningfully. "Fellow Taoist, we 2 old farts haven't cared about the Gu family's affairs for many years. If you can cure Qingyang this time, then everything will be fine. But if you're just making empty promises, even if the Gu family is beaten to a pulp, we'll still tear a piece of Xianmeng's flesh off." "Ha ha!" Sumo couldn't help but laugh. "Fellow Taoist, I won't give you that chance. Leave Gu Qingyang's illness to me." "Many thanks." The 2 white-haired old men didn't say anything else. Instead, they cupped their hands in thanks. They were old freaks who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. Even if their hearts were in turmoil, they could still control their emotions well. Gu Yu, Sumo, and the others bid farewell and left the courtyard. After passing through several courtyards, they returned to the villa's main hall. Gu Yazi and the others were still waiting inside. A few hours wasn't a long time for them. Gu Yu returned the medallion, then got straight to the point. Second uncle, Senior Su has already met Brother Jio. Now, I want to ask Father to come out of seclusion. Oh! A strange look flashed across Gu Yazi's eyes. City Lord Su, are you sure? Yes. Sumo nodded. Good. Gu Yazi was also a resolute person. Xing arrange for City Lord Su and the others to rest first. You and I will go to ask Big Brother to come out of seclusion. Yes. Gu Xing replied. City Lord Su and the two Alliance Masters, this matter is of great importance. Please wait for a day. Gu Yazi cupped his hands in front of his chest to Sumo, Yu Wuji, and Long Wanqing. It's okay. Sumo and the others cupped their hands in return. Gu Xing led Sumo and the others to rest in the courtyard. After everyone left, only Gu Yu and Gu Yazi were left in the main hall. You what do you think of the current situation? Gu Yazi asked. Gu Yu thought for a moment and said, Second uncle, forgive me for speaking frankly. On that night more than 30,000 years ago, the Gu family's strength was greatly damaged. Brother Nine's matter not only caused the direct descendants of the Gu family to be killed, but it also meant that we destroyed two break-world ancestors. Now, in the Gu family, the two break-world cultivators who can fight are you and my father. To be honest, the Gu family is the weakest in the Sannan family. In the ancient Shu continent, the strong are respected the most. The future of the Gu family is worrying. Gu Yazi nodded. How about Xianmeng? Xianmeng, hee. Gu Yu laughed. Second uncle, I think you, my father, and the elders in the family have already evaluated how Xianmeng is. I just want to say that I would rather belong to Xianmeng than be suppressed by the Chu family and the Yin family. The Tianhu Chu family is fine, but the Cold Mountain Yin family has been secretly building up their power. They are definitely ambitious. For tens of thousands of years, the unification of the ancient Shu is the general trend. Sumo's condition for saving Qingyang is to let the Gu family join Xianmeng. Gu Yazi sighed. Let's go. Let's go to the ancestral hall in the backyard. After that, the two of them went straight to the backyard. The ancestral hall of the Gu family was a courtyard that was neither too big nor too small. It was in the northernmost part of the mountain. There were the soul lamps of the ancestors of the Gu family and the current disciples of the Gu family. On the left and right sides of the ancestral hall there were 3 rooms. They were locked all year round and runes were flowing, because this was the place where the important people of the Gu family cultivated. The ancestral hall of the Gu family was not a place that people could enter and leave at will. However, Gu Yazi was an exception. After going through a light door, Gu Yazi and Gu Yu were already standing in the ancestral hall yard. Chapter 559. Sumo and the others were placed in a courtyard of the Gu family's manor. In that courtyard there were 7 or 8 rooms. There were old trees that reached the sky. It was very elegant and quiet. At this time, people from Xianmeng gathered in a room to discuss matters. Yu Wuji looked at Sumo and said, Sumo, if the Gu family is the first to submit, Xianmeng can promise them a leader position for 3,000 years. A leader for 3,000 years? Sumo asked. In other words, for the next 3,000 years, we can give a fixed position of alliance leader to the Gu family. They do not need to go through a test to get a leader position, Yu Wuji said. You have to know that the other leaders of Xianmeng have to go through many tests before they can be recommended. 2/3 of the Break World elders in Xianmeng agree to become the leader. Plus, the term is only 500 years. There is a rotation of 100 years. 3,000 years is like 6 leaders, Long Tianhao said. Even in Xianmeng's 7 immortal families, they are in the top 3. Of the 7 great undying families, apart from our Long family, Only the Jiang family has held the position of alliance leader for 6 years. This is Xianming's greatest sincerity. Yuwuji looked at Sumo and said, "As for the other areas of power and resource distribution, we can talk about them when the Gu family has submitted." Sumo listened carefully. If one of the 3 southern families submitted, it would be very meaningful, Long Tianhao said. It could be said that once the Gu family submitted, the other 2 families would collapse on their own. That is why the Celestial Alliance is willing to do this. Long Wanqing sighed. But the Gu family must have at least 1 break world cultivator, Yu Wuji said. That is Xianming's rule. There can be no exceptions. Hostage? Suemo couldn't help but smile. If you're sincere in submitting, then you're not a hostage, but a fated person. Yu Wuji laughed and said, "Let me ask you something. Among the break world cultivators of the Xianming's immortal families, how many of them did not go to the ancient Shu mountain?" That's right. Long Wanqing sighed. Xianming is our strongest support. The ancient Shu continent can only be stronger if it is unified. After listening, Sumo nodded again. I understand. I will make everything perfect, Sumo said. In fact, looking at the situation of the whole Pure Land, it also needed the ancient Shu to unify. Then, the Pure Land would be unified. Only then would they be able to better contend against Tianfu City. It should be said that the right time, the right place, and the right people were all present. Meanwhile, Gu Clan Ancestral Hall. Gu Yazi had already brought Gu Yu into Ancient Holy Sun's seclusion grounds. Ancient Holy Child had the appearance of a middle-aged cultivator. He was brimming with vigor and vitality. He was in the middle stage of the break world stage. Right now, he was at his peak. Ancient Holy Sun was the strongest power in the Gu family. It could be said that the Gu family had begun to decline, but they were still standing. It was mostly because of the existence of Ancient Holy Sun. In the Sannan family, the highest level cultivator was in the middle stage of the break world stage. Ancient Holy Sun was in the middle stage of the break world stage, and his power was very strong. That kind of shock made people with ambitions not dare to act rashly. That was why the balance of the Sannan family was maintained. The balance between the Sannan family and Xianming family was maintained. If that balance was broken, the situation would change dramatically. At this time, the 3 of them had been talking for a long time. Even though Gu Xingzi was in seclusion, everything was already clear to him now. Gu Qingyang had always been a pain in the Gu family. But, like Gu Yu said, in a sense, Gu Qingyang was the Gu family. With Gu Qingyang's talent, if he could be cured, it would not be a problem for him to reach the Destroy Sea realm. The Gu family could turn things around. Plus, he had taken Sumo into consideration. The late stage of the break world stage was enough to suppress all the cultivators in the ancient Shu. To them, the 3 realms galaxy was an unreal existence. However, there was Murong Haiqing before and there was Sumo after. That meant it was a power that could not be underestimated. The Gu family needed to develop, so they needed to make a choice. When the other party was still weak, they needed the Gu family. Otherwise, the opportunity would be fleeting. Submitting to Xianming and making friends with the cultivators of the 3 realms galaxy could make the Gu family shine again. Plus, Gu Qingyang was a reincarnator of the 3 realms. With such an identity, it was enough for them to gamble. So, when it came to submitting to Xianming, Ancient Holy Sun and Gu Yazi had no disagreement. However, they needed to maximize the benefits of the Gu family. There were many details that needed to be negotiated. Of course, they also understood what it meant for Xianming to submit to the Gu family. So, they had to ensure the benefits of the Gu family. Pass on the order. An hour later, all the elders of the Gu family in the Red Desert will gather in the Ancestral Hall. Those who don't come will be punished according to the family rules. Yes, sir, Gu Yu replied. Soon, the elders of the Gu family in the Red Desert began to return to the villa and the Ancestral Hall. They were all the cultivators of the God-burying realm. Some of them had already guessed something, while others still didn't know why they were summoned back in such a hurry. In short, this night was destined to be special for the Gu family. The Cold Mountain was the easternmost part of the ancient Shu continent. It was a very special mountain range, because, after crossing the Cold Mountain range, there was an endless ravine. And if one crossed the ravine, one could reach the bitter Samsara Sea. The bitter Samsara Sea was the center of the Pure Land. There were many treasures in the bitter Samsara Sea. For the cultivators of the ancient Shu continent, the bitter Samsara Sea was a place where they could adventure. And the Yin family of the Cold Mountain were frequent visitors to the bitter Samsara Sea. Almost every disciple of the Yin family had experience in the bitter Samsara Sea. Crossing the Heaven Ravine was a common thing for them. At the same time, at the foot of the Cold Mountain, a small boat was approaching slowly from the direction of the ravine. It was a black boat, with an old man in black clothing standing on it. The old man was tall and big. He stood on the boat with his hands folded behind his back, looking at the Cold Mountain. He had white hair and looked like a tiger. The small boat was traveling in the ravine like the wave. However, the old man didn't move a muscle on the boat. Everything in the ravine moved away from him. At the foot of the Cold Mountain, some people were waiting for the old man to come back. 2 men and 1 woman. The 2 male practitioners were wearing a long gray robe, and their appearances were almost identical. The other female practitioner was wearing a long red dress, with fair skin and an enchanting figure. She was very beautiful and full of charm. Unfortunately, there was a long scar on the left side of her face. They were none other than the 3 guests of the Yin family who had been fooled by Sumo that day. Seeing the small boat, the 3 of them knelt down on their knees. And the old man in black clothing had already come close to them. "Welcome home, great grandmaster," the 3 guests of the Yin family said at the same time. "Hee," the old man in black clothing nodded with a smile. "The 3 little guys have grown up. Not bad, get up." If the other cultivators of the ancient Shu continent were to hear these words, they would definitely be extremely shocked. It was because the 3 guests of the Yin family were all powerful swordsmen who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. It was then that the energy of the old man in black clothing spread out slightly. The 3 guests of the Yin family couldn't help but feel shocked. The state of breaking realm. It was a state that the practitioners of the ancient Shu had never reached. Chapter 560. The Gu Family Villa. Sumo and the others didn't know the details of the internal meeting of the Gu family. However, on the 3rd day after they arrived at the Gu family, Gu Yu and Gu Xing came to invite Sumo, Yu Wuji, and Long Wanqing. In the main hall of the villa, Sumo and the others met with Gu Xingzi. It could be said that both sides weighed the pros and cons, and then took what they needed. Therefore, both Xianmeng and the Gu family were very sincere. Therefore, the whole process of the meeting went very smoothly. The Gu family joined Xianmeng, and would get the position of leader for 3,000 years, while Gu Yazi would be stationed at ancient Shu Peak to cultivate the resources of the Red Desert, on the premise of meeting the needs of the Gu family, would be allocated by Xianmeng. At the same time, Xianmeng would transfer other cultivation resources to the Gu family. The area under the jurisdiction of the Gu family was still the Red Desert area. However, the headquarters of Xianmeng would also send cultivators to the Red Desert to cooperate with the management. The Gu family would no longer wear the cultivator uniform of Sannan, but the cultivator uniform of Xianmeng. However, all of this must be based on the foundation that Sumo cured Gu Qingyang. This was also the biggest prerequisite for the Gu family to join Xianmeng. Otherwise, nothing would count. In the end, the 2 sides made an oath of alliance and made a contract. The Gu family was only 1 step away from truly joining Xianmeng. There was no time to lose. Under Sumo's suggestion, Gu Xingzi, Gu Yazi, Gu Yu, and other important figures of the Gu family, as well as Yu Wuji, Long Wanqing, and other cultivators of Xianmeng, went directly to the cave residence where Gu Qingyang was sealed. This time, the white-haired granny in red and the father-in-law didn't show up at all. Of course, they had already been informed of the agreement between the Gu family and Xianmeng. As long as Gu Qingyang could recover, they had no other ideas. Alas! Old man, do you think that poor child can really be cured? In the dark, the white-haired granny changed her usual hostile tone. It's very likely, the white-haired duke said. If that Sumo wasn't confident, she wouldn't have made such a big fuss. The discussion was over. The Gu family had already agreed to join the Immortal Alliance. If they couldn't cure Qin Yang's illness, not only did Xianmeng embarrass himself, but they've also toyed with our Gu family. The white-haired eunuch lowered his voice slightly. If that's the case, I'll risk my life to kill a few alliance masters of Xianmeng. But, the white-haired eunuch calmed himself down. I think Sumo should be fine. That person is very special. He will never make empty promises. I hope everything goes well. The white-haired granny sighed. The two of them were silent. Underground cave. Sumo and the others had already arrived outside the light screen. Inside the light screen, Gu Qingyang was sitting cross-legged with his hair draped over his shoulders. Seeing Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi, his expression was gloomy. Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi both had complicated expressions. Gu Qingyang used to be Gu Yazi's youngest son. However, at that moment, they were no longer able to determine exactly whose son Gu Qingyang was, because the other 8 dragon souls were attached to his body. They were the divine souls of the other Gu family brothers. The 9 dragons were one, and Gu Qingyang could be said to be the same bloodline of the brothers. Qingyang. Gu Xingzi sighed and called out. Gu Yazi also called out softly. However, Gu Qingyang looked at them coldly, confused, and did not say anything. He seemed to have no interest in many external things. You're back. Gu Qingyang's gaze finally fell on Sumo. He only remembered that this black-robed cultivator had come 2 days ago. As for the others, including Gu Yu, Gu Xing, Yu Wuji, Long Wanqing, and the others, he had no impression of them. It could be said that his soul was in a state of emptiness. If the dragon's saliva back then was the leakage of the reincarnated body, then Gu Qingyang was the leakage of his divine soul. His divine soul could not store anything at all. That's right. Sumo smiled and said, You still remember me. Very good. Seeing this situation, Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi were confident in their hearts. Gu Qingyang's feelings towards Sumo were indeed a little different. Gu Qingyang, I'm here to receive you today. Sumo looked at Gu Qingyang and smiled again. You've been lost for too long. Your soul needs to go home. What? Gu Qingyang looked at Sumo in a daze. In fact, he did not understand what Sumo said. He was confused and ignorant. Patriarchs, all of you, please step back. In a moment, no one is allowed to come within 10 feet of me. Otherwise, you will die. Sumo turned her head and solemnly said to Gu Xingzi. Gu Xingzi heard this and raised his eyebrows slightly. Then, he took the initiative to retreat 10 feet away. When he retreated, the other people of the Gu family naturally retreated. Yu Wuji, Long Wanqing, and the others also retreated. Sumo stood alone in front. She was only 10 feet away from Gu Qingyang. There were layers of light screens in the middle. At that moment, the entire cave house was silent. The 2 ancestral patriarchs on the surface were also watching everything. Sumo's expression was very calm. Because Gon Tianqing was an existence of the 3 realms in the past. Sumo put his divine soul in one place, so it could be said that it was a piece of cake. However, Sumo did not want to make everything look too easy. So, Sumo began to make a seal. Roar, roar, and at that moment, Gu Qingyang seemed to instinctively sense a kind of danger. He suddenly stood up, looked up to the sky and roared. The 8 dragon souls around him began to bare their fangs and claws at the same time. Divine Dragon, don't be impatient. Sumo's tone was very calm, which made people feel very comfortable. At the same time, his eyes turned pitch black again. Black vortexes began to appear. Inside the demonic eyes, there were the reflections of the three realms. However, only Gu Qingyang could see those scenes. A blood moon surrounded by 7 stars. That was the former Shura demon continent. In the corner of the Blood Mountain there was a small building. Countless white bones accumulated into a column. That was the former Pakshuan Heaven Pavilion. Life and death, killing, transforming into a dragon. The scenes that appeared in Sumo's eyes were all Gan Tianqing's memories. However, it was not Sumo who developed everything, but Gan Tianqing's divine soul that was awakening. Sumo did not fully know what Gan Tianqing had experienced. He was only a guide. Breathe, inhale, exhale. Gradually, the slightly irascible Gu Qingyang actually stood there and slowly closed his eyes. This was the first time in 30,000 years that he closed his eyes when he should not be sleeping. His breathing gradually steadied. It was as if this was the only real sleep he had in the past 30,000 years. Sumo smiled faintly. His hand seals changed again. His fingertips emitted 9 rays of light at the same time. One of them went straight into Gu Qingyang's Dan Si. The other 8 each went to a dragon soul. Roar! The 8 dragon souls shuddered, but their roars had already turned into moans. Before the 3 realms' power of origin, they could only submit. Then, the rays of light wrapped around them and went straight into Gu Qingyang's Dan Si. There was no sound, no struggle. That scene made all the members of the Gu family who were present excited. Because the 8 dragon souls did not reappear with Gu Qingyang's breathing. Divine Dragon, awaken! Su Mo exclaimed softly. Chapter 561. Any life without a soul was a tragedy. Gu Qingyang spent 30,000 years in a muddle-headed state. These 30,000 years were like a dream to him. Moreover, it was a dream that he would forget everything after he woke up. In fact, when he first saw Sumo, especially Sumo's black eyes, Gu Qingyang's soul had gradually awakened. It wasn't because of Sumo's technique, but because of the aura of the 3 realms' origin that came with Sumo. 9 divine dragon transformations, 9 dragons in one body. Although Gan Tianqing was a special existence in the 3 realms galaxy, he was still from the 3 realms. That year, when the Milky Way shattered, he was already an eternal 9th stage almighty. The destructive power of the realm Lotus had killed him 9 times. Therefore, his 9 souls had reincarnated one after another. Fortunately, they had all reincarnated into the Gu family. Unfortunately, the 9 souls were no longer one. The 9th soul was Gan Tianqing's primary soul. In the beginning, he only knew that he was Gu Qingyang. Above him there were 8 special brothers. However, after passing the mortal stage, Gu Qingyang's soul fluctuated inexplicably. He often felt that there were indiscernible voices in his mind, disorderly. Occasionally, when he saw his other 8 brothers, he would fall into a momentary trance. However, he could control himself and didn't mind it too much. When all 9 souls ascended to the soul burial stage, the trance reached an extreme. In truth, it was a strong resonance, a mutual summoning. However, that resonance and summoning came with a price of blood. That night, Gu Qingyang was completely unable to control himself. In fact, he did not even know that he had killed his 8 elder brothers and other clansmen. That was the only way for the 8 dragon souls to return to his side. However, the 9 dragon souls couldn't fuse into one. The 8 dragon souls coiled around his body. They lacked the power to fuse with one another. As he inhaled and exhaled, Gu Qingyang was suffering and struggling in the splitting and closing of his soul. It could be said that Gu Qingyang had not been awake since that night. However, everything had changed today. Sumo released the 3 realms' origin energy, and the 8 dragon souls were guided straight into Gu Qingyang's Dan Si. A huge whirlpool appeared in the center of his core Si. There was already a golden 5-clawed dragon soul inside the vortex. That dragon soul was clearer and more powerful than the other 8 dragon souls. Howl, roar, within the whirlpool, the dragon soul raised its head to the sky and roared, instantly stirring up a 1,000-meter-tall wave. Right at this moment, the other 8 dragon souls had already arrived. Roar, woo! The 8 dragon souls surrounded the golden dragon soul and roared into the sky. They seemed to be greeting each other. Hua then, the golden dragon soul suddenly soared into the sky and charged straight for one of the dragon souls. Hua, the golden dragon soul opened its huge mouth and directly devoured the first dragon soul. The dragon soul that was being devoured seemed to be prepared and did not struggle at all. The golden dragon soul did not stop and went straight for the second dragon soul. The same action, the same situation. The golden dragon soul flew one round in the sky above the Dan Sea. All 8 dragon souls were devoured. At this moment, the golden dragon soul had turned into a 9-colored dragon soul. Howl, roar! The 9-colored dragon soul raised its head to the sky and roared. Then, it suddenly plunged into Gu Qingyang's Dan Sea and disappeared. At this moment, Gu Qingyang's body trembled slightly. The dragon god had awakened. The dragon god had awakened. Sumo's words resounded in Gu Qingyang's mind like an oracle. It was a true awakening. Gu Qingyang slowly opened his eyes in a seemingly leisurely manner. It was as if he had just woken up from a great slumber that had lasted for tens of thousands of years. His eyes were still a little sleepy. However, countless information surged into his mind like a tide. The past of the 3 realms, the past of the Milky Way. Everything came one after another. He was Gan Tianqing, reincarnated from the destruction of the Milky Way. Gu Qingyang's eyes gradually became clear. Finally, a divine light exploded in the depths of his eyes. Boom! It was a soundless explosion. Gu Qingyang had completely awakened. Qingyang! Brother Jiu! The Gu family hurriedly called out. Even the usually calm Gu Xingzi was a little excited. They could all see that Gu Qingyang's aura was completely different from before. The heavy breathing was gone, and all the dragon souls had disappeared. Gu Qingyang stood up and glanced at Sumo and Yuwuji. He did not immediately respond, but knelt in front of Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi. I am unfilial. I'm sorry for making you worry. Gu Qingyang solemnly kowtowed to Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi 3 times. Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi could not help but look at each other. In their eyes there was surprise and helplessness. It was really sad that the 9 sons of the Gu family had turned into one person in the end. Gu Xingzi and Gu Yazi stepped forward at the same time, each holding one of Gu Qingyang's arms, and gently pulled him up. He was the only male heir of the Gu family. Gu Qingyang was the future of the Gu family. It's good that you're awake. It's good that you're awake. Gu Yazi's eyes were filled with tears as she patted Gu Qingyang's shoulder. In this way, we can answer to the ancestors of the Gu family. Brother Jiu. Brother Jiu. Gu Xing and Gu Yu also came forward to greet him. Gu Yu was the happiest among all of them. She had already cried tears of joy. Her long-cherished wish had finally been fulfilled after 30,000 years. It's been hard on you for 30,000 years. Gu Qingyang looked at his 2 sisters. It's not hard at all. Gu Yu smiled with tears in her eyes. Sumo, Yuwuji, and the others did not step forward to speak. After all, this was a warm moment that belonged to the Gu family. In the end, Gu Qingyang separated the Gu family and walked to Sumo. He knelt on one knee solemnly and said, Divine Dragon Gan Tianqing pays his respects to the Demon King. Sumo pulled Gan Tianqing up and said, Divine Dragon Pavilion Master, the 2 realms reincarnated. Now, the 9 dragons have become one. Congratulations! If the Demon King hadn't arrived, I don't know when I would have shown my true body. I thank the Demon King here. Gan Tianqing expressed his gratitude again. The Milky Way shattered, and all the cultivators perished. It's our fortune that the undead like us could meet in another world. Sumo let out a long sigh. Gon Tianqing nodded, then turned to Yu Wuji and bowed deeply. Gon Tianqing greets the pavilion master's wife. Oh! Yu Wuji couldn't help but be stunned. It was not surprising that Gon Tianqing recognized Sumo just now. Because just now, Sumo had released the power of the three realms to receive him. However, Gon Tianqing recognized him at first glance? One had to know that not only had Yu Wuji changed his appearance, but he was also wearing a veil. Moreover, she did not say a word from beginning to end. Yu Wuji asked curiously, "Divine Dragon Pavilion Master, how did you recognize me?" "Palace Master Yu, do you have the aura of a Pavilion Master on you? That's why I guessed your identity." Gon Tianqing smiled. A green light flashed between Yu Wuji's brows. That was the life-saving aura that the Azure Fiend had left for her. He did not expect the divine dragon Gon Tianqing to be so sharp. Back in the days, apart from the Azure Fiend, the divine dragon was known as the number one in the Xian Tian Pavilion. The other cultivators could not understand the conversation between the three. However, the Gu family felt that Sumo and Yu Wuji had unfathomable origins. "Everyone, how about we talk on the surface?" Gu Yazi suggested. "Alright." Everyone agreed. This was not the place to talk. Therefore, everyone returned to the courtyard on the surface. At this moment, the white-haired granny and the eunuch were already waiting in the courtyard. Gon Tianqing knelt to them again to apologize. For 30,000 years, these two ancestors of the Gu clan had sealed him away to protect him. Without them, Gon Tianqing might not have been able to wait for Sumo's arrival. "Evil spawn, you must cultivate well and bring the Gu family to greater height. Otherwise, you'll be letting down the Gu family members who died for you." The red-haired granny teared up and scolded with a smile. The red-haired eunuch smiled and did not say anything. "I understand," Gon Tianqing replied respectfully. Just like that, everyone left the courtyard. The red-haired granny and the eunuch could finally leave this place and regain their freedom. The Gu family's forbidden land disappeared. Chapter 562. Gu Qingyang, the heir of the Gu family, had cultivated for 30,000 years and came out of seclusion at the middle stage of the Breaking World realm. This news quickly spread throughout the Red Desert. It could be said that the entire Red Desert was jubilant. Because a cultivator at the middle stage of the Breaking World realm could break the balance and change the situation. The strength of the Gu family had greatly improved. The entire Red Desert would benefit. This news was deliberately spread by the Gu family. Soon, the Chu family and the Yin family learned about it. The Sanan family used to be one, advancing and retreating together. However, at this time, when the news of Gu Qingyang came out, the other two families sensed an ominous atmosphere. Gu Qingyang was a name that had disappeared for a long time. Even the Chu family and the Yin family thought that the heir of the Gu family was long gone. There were various theories about the 9 sons of the Gu family, but none of them had been confirmed. However, the Chu family and the Yin family certainly didn't want the Gu family to have a cultivator at the middle stage of the Breaking World realm out of thin air. Gu Qingyang suddenly came out of seclusion, which made people feel a little strange. Moreover, the news that someone from Xianmeng had come to the Red Desert also spread like wildfire. The Chu family and the Yin family felt that something was wrong. Therefore, they all took action. The relationship between the Sanan family and the Chu family was closer to the Gu family. The two sides even had the idea of marriage. Chu Fei and Chu Yun were the best of the Chu family. Gu Xing and Gu Yu were also the best of the Gu family. They were about the same age and the same realm. Therefore, the two families were interested. However, among them, only Gu Yu refused to nod. There were some clues about the matter between Chu Fei and Gu Xing. Therefore, the two families didn't follow up. After all, cultivators didn't care about age as much as mortals did. Everything was not in a hurry. Especially the Gu family and the Chu family. Once they got married, it might make the Yin family embarrassed and sensitive. At the same time, it would also affect the structure of the Sannan family. Therefore, these things needed to be planned and considered carefully. However, this time, the Chu family understood that they needed to take some action. If a cultivator Xianmeng really came to the Gu family, and at this time, a Gu Qingyang suddenly appeared, that meant things weren't as simple as they seemed. Therefore, on the third day after Gu Qingyang came out of seclusion, the Gu family received a visiting card from the Chu family. 3 days later, the Chu clan would send the human clan's great elder, Chu Fei, and the others to congratulate Gu Qingyang for breaking through and coming out of seclusion. Everyone understood that this was a test by the Chu family. However, whether it was Sumo, Yu Wuji, Gu Xingzi, or Gu Qingyang, they all hoped that the Chu family could come. The Gu family had secretly joined Xianmeng. Compared to the Chu family and the Yin family, it was easier for the Chu family to join Xianmeng. Furthermore, the Tianhu Lake, controlled by the Chu family, occupied a vast area and had abundant cultivation resources. In terms of the size of the territory controlled and the richness of resources, the Chu family was the first among the Sannan families. The Chu family proposed to congratulate Gu Qingyang for coming out of seclusion, which was a kind of goodwill in itself. After all, the news of Gu Qingyang coming out of seclusion and Xianmeng coming to the Gu family were deliberately spread by Sumo and Gu Qingyang. If the Chu family had a strong conflict, they would probably not send a formal visiting card, but secretly send someone to investigate. Therefore, the development of the situation was under Sumo's control. At night, in a tall building of the Gu family's villa, Sumo and Gan Tianqing stood on the top floor of the tall building, looking out with their hands behind their back. Red City was emitting a faint red glow inside and outside. The night here was very special. Demon King, if we unify the ancient Shu, will we be able to challenge Tianfu? Gan Tianqing asked. The Pure Lands have 3 continents. The White Bone continent is under my control. The chaotic god has probably been subdued by the dragon's saliva, and the ancient Shu has submitted. Then, with the addition of Mu Qingqing's 9 underworlds, the entire Pure Lands will be in the hands of the reincarnators of the 3 realms. Sumo sighed. Maybe, in terms of peak power, we are not as strong as Tianfu, but we can put up a fight. Demon King, how is your true combat strength? Gan Tianqing asked with a smile that was not a smile. This was because he knew that people like Su Mo could not be used as a reference for their realms. True combat strength? Sumo couldn't help but smile. If you count all the things I have, then I should be able to kill a 1 reincarnation realm expert. Eternal realm? Although Gan Tianqing was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. Sumo could kill a 1 reincarnation realm expert at the middle stage of the Breaking World realm. That was unbelievable. Sumo shook her head and smiled. It's not me that can do it, it's the things I have that can. I have a Holy Lotus spirit sense, so it should be easy for me to destroy an Eternal Realm expert. Of course, before I fight with Tianfu, I need to make some preparations. I have a puppet that I haven't subdued yet. Holy Lotus spirit sense? Gan Tianqing selectively ignored the latter part of Sumo's words and frowned. Holy Lotus is really from the Yizang realm. That's right. Sumo nodded. He is from the Li dynasty of the ancient Lotus Starfield, but I am not sure about the specifics. The Yizang realm is too big. Holy Father Amu, is there any news? Gan Tianqing asked. There's no news. Sumo sighed. Songhai is right. Something must have happened to Amu. Otherwise, with his character and ability, he should have found us a long time ago. Isn't that right? Gan Tianqing nodded. Unify the ancient Shu, and then defeat the Tianfu city. I will leave the Pure Land world and go to a bigger space to find everything. Sumo looked at the sky. His gaze was very distant. Wind wheel or dust net? What about the people of the Pure Land? Gan Tianqing asked. The people of the Pure Land? Sumo's mouth curved. The people of the Pure Land, of course, are still in the Pure Land. We are all reincarnating in the Pure Land. This is also our second home. Banish the Tianfu city, and the Pure Land will not become a puppet. This place will become the real Pure Land. Divine Dragon, I want to restore the Star River, but I didn't say I want to destroy Izong. So, I won't let innocent people die. However, I won't let the cultivator who destroyed the Star River go. Either he kills me or I kill him. At the end, Sumo's eyes flashed with hostility. Because this hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. Gon Tianqing listened and nodded lightly. Demon King, I am Gon Tianqing, and also Gu Qingyang. If you do this, I won't be embarrassed. Unify the ancient Shu, in my opinion, is as easy as flipping my hand. When we defeat the Tianfu city, the Pure Land will really become a Pure Land. I am willing to work with the Demon King to find the other 3 realms reincarnators. Returning my Star River is my responsibility, Gon Tianqing said. Sumo said, more and more people in the 3 realms are awakening. Our path is not lonely. In fact, every cultivator of the Star River has a heart to make the Star River brilliant again. I only hope that we can meet again soon. Gon Tianqing smiled faintly. 3 days later, the cultivators of the Chu family had arrived at the Red Desert. Gu Yazi brought Gu Qingyang, Gu Xing, and Gu Yu to meet them 3,000 miles away from the Red City to show their importance. In addition to Chu Fei and Chu Yun, the Chu family also brought 3 cultivators in the later stage of the god-burying realm. At the same time, they were led by the great elder of the Chu family, Chu Yunan. Chu Yunan was in the middle stage of the world-breaking realm. He was an important figure in the Chu family, and his words carried enormous weight. Chu Jingxiu, the current master of the Chu family, was still his junior in terms of seniority. Therefore, the Chu family's lineup this time could be said to be powerful. At the same time, the Yin family of the Cold Mountain had begun to hold a high-level meeting. The Yin family would never submit to them, because they had the great completion of the world-breaking realm. Chapter 563. The Gu Clan Villa. Because of Chu Yunan's arrival, the Gu clan received him with the highest standards. However, the Gu Holy Son did not show himself. Gu Yazi, Gu Qingyang, and the others accompanied him the entire time. Sumo, Yuwuji, and the others naturally could not show themselves. After exchanging greetings, Chu Yunan went straight to the point and asked the Gu Holy Son, Brother Gu, our Gu and Chu clans have been on good terms for generations. We have come this time to congratulate young Master Qingyang on his breakthrough, and we also have some matters that we would like to consult with you on. Elder Chu is too serious. If there is anything, please speak, Gu Yazi said with a smile. Recently, I heard that someone from the Xianmeng family came to the Red Desert. Is this true, or does the Gu clan have a new plan? Chu Yunan's words were very direct. There was no need to beat around the bush at this time. Haha. Gu Yazi couldn't help but laugh. Elder Chu, in truth, if no one from the Chu clan had come in the last 2 days, we would have invited them. To tell you the truth, people from Xianmeng have indeed come to the Red Desert. Oh! Chu Yunan's expression flickered. Although he had been mentally prepared, he had not expected Gu Yazi to admit it so readily. This meant that the Gu clan had already made up their mind and were fearless. How do we proceed on the path of the Gu clan? Chu Yunan continued to ask. Elder Chu, let me ask you first, how is Xianmeng? Gu Yazi did not immediately answer, instead asking a question of his own. Xianmeng? Haha. Chu Yunan couldn't help but laugh. Brother Gu, why ask me about Xianmeng? Our Sannan clan and Xianmeng have coexisted on the ancient Shu continent for millions of years. We all know what Xianmeng is like. Magnanimous. Gu Yazi asked Chu Yunan. Chu Yunan thought for a moment before finally nodding. In truth, Xianmeng was far stronger than the Sannan clan. However, for many millenniums, Xianmeng's overall attitude towards Sannan had always been relatively gentle. Just like what Jiang Yuntian had said before, Xianmeng didn't want the ancient Shu to be flooded with blood. Otherwise, he could have easily recovered the land of Sannan. The Sannan family relied on Xianmeng's attitude to occupy the south of Shu. Xianmeng is a country of benevolence and righteousness. Chu Yunnan sighed. The Sannan clan would not deny this point. Elder Chu is right, Gu Yazi agreed. You and I both understand that if Xianmeng wanted to massacre the Three South, he would have done it long ago. Although the price was high, victory was certain. But Xianmeng didn't do that. We ancient Shu cultivators only recognize the benevolent, the strong, the wise, and the brave. In fact, there are many of them in Xianmeng. Gu Yazi looked at Chu Yunnan and said, "Ha ha." When Chu Yunnan heard Gu Yazi's words, she couldn't help but smile coldly. "Brother Gu, is there no such person in our Sannan clan?" The Gu family, the Chu family, and the Yin family, which family leader is not in the middle stage of the Breaking World realm. Not to mention, there are several Breaking World realm cultivators in the Sannan clan. I am not talented, but I am not among them. What Xianmeng has, the Sannan clan also has. Gu Yazi smiled. What Elder Chu said is very true. However, there are some things that Xianmeng has but we may not have. Of course, what we have, Xianmeng may not have. That's why we're able to communicate with each other normally. In the final analysis, Xianmeng and Sannan clan need each other. Ha ha! Chu Yunnan's face softened a little. Brother Gu, what you said is reasonable. However, although Xianmeng is strong, our Sannan clan is not weak. We can't bow down to him. We don't have to bow down to him. Gu Yazi shook his head. But this time, people from Xianmeng came to invite us to join Xianmeng. Join Xianmeng? Chu Yunnan's voice was low. This idea is not surprising. For so many years, Xianmeng's previous leaders all had this idea, but they didn't have the ability. Their elders didn't have a character that could suppress the Sannan clan. Why do they want us to join Xianmeng? Why didn't any of its immortal families come to join the Sannan clan? Xianmeng has a character that can suppress the Sannan clan. Gu Yazi saw that Chu Yunnan was in a bad mood. It seemed he needed to suppress his momentum. Suppress the Sannan clan? Who? Chu Yunnan's mind was spinning. He knew almost all of the more than 20 Breaking World elders of Xianmeng. Among them, the highest level was only the middle stage of the Breaking World. The late stage of the Breaking World was like an insurmountable gap for ancient Shu. He had never heard of anyone who could break through. Was it the first elder of Xianmeng who claimed to be the most powerful? Wasn't that old man's lifespan about to end? How could he break through? Old Shu, I won't lie to you, Gu Yazi said. Xianmeng's people are in my mountain. Ha ha. Chu Yunnan's lips curled up. He coldly laughed. Brother Gu, it looks like the Gu family is ready to join Xianmeng. Are you going to force the Chu family to submit? Gu Yazi quickly waved his hand and said, Old Chu, what are you talking about? I, Gu Yazi, promise that every member of the Chu family will be safe in the Red Desert. No matter if it is Xianmeng or the Gu family, they will not harm you. When two countries are at war, we don't kill envoys. Besides, we are like a family. I just want to tell you everything. I don't want to hide anything in case the Chu family misjudge the situation. The Gu family has indeed agreed to join Xianmeng, Gu Yazi said seriously. As for the future of the Chu family, it's up to the Chu family to decide. But no matter what, even if the Gu family joins Xianmeng, we will never touch any member of the Chu family, let alone invade an inch of Tianhu's land. Old Chu, my words represent the entire Gu family. Gu Yazi solemnly cupped his hands to Chu Yunnan. Well, hearing Gu Yazi's words, Chu Yunnan couldn't help but let out a long sigh. To be honest, Gu Yazi's words moved her and increased the pressure. One of the three major families was gone. The situation was not good. However, the Gu family's credibility was beyond doubt. After a long while, the whole hall was silent. Chu Yunan didn't say anything. The other members of the Chu family frowned. Of course, the Gu family was not in a hurry to say anything. The Chu family needed to think about the current situation. Although they had a plan when they came. However, he still needed to calm down. Only Gu Xing, who was standing behind Gu Yazi, had been looking at Chu Fei anxiously. Chu Fei and Gu Xing had long been interested in each other. Therefore, at this time, she certainly hoped that the Chu family could also get close to Xianmeng. Otherwise, they wouldn't have enough time. Elder Chu, if you're interested, I'm willing to help you. We might as well invite Xianmeng's people, and we can sit down and have a detailed discussion. No matter what, the Gu family will guarantee the safety of the Chu family. At this moment, Gan Tianqing looked at the situation and could not help but smile. With Gan Tianqing's wisdom, his grasp of the situation far surpassed Gu Yazi's. Ha ha! Chu Yunan looked at Gan Tianqing and said, "The younger generation will surpass the older. I can meet Xianmeng's people. However, I'm not here to discuss anything. Instead, I'm here to fight with Xianmeng's men. If you can convince this old man, then we'll talk about it again. Otherwise, haha, let's not talk about it. We're members of the Chu family. So what if we die here?" Chapter 564. Fight with Xianmeng's people? Chu Yunan's words made all the members of the Gu family slightly stunned. It seemed that the people of the Chu family were not willing to bow their heads easily. Ha ha! Gan Tianqing smiled. Make friends through martial arts. The strong are respected. What Mr. Chu said made sense. If Xianmeng loses, he is not qualified to let us join. Gu Yu, invite the cultivators of Xianmeng. Yes, Gu Yu answered. Now that Chu Yunan had spoken, Gan Tianqing didn't give him a chance to regret. He directly asked Gu Yu to invite Sumo, Yu Wuji, and the others. Gan Tianqing knew that Xianmeng would never be defeated. Chu Yunan's expression didn't change. He was in the middle stage of the breaking world. In the whole Chu family, he was the second best, except for the family master. Among the cultivators of Xianmeng, even the first elder, who was the strongest, didn't dare to say that he could defeat him. Therefore, Chu Yunan was not afraid. However, if the people of Xianmeng could defeat him, the Chu family didn't mind talking with the people of Xianmeng. A wise man submits to circumstances. Of course, he knew the importance of the current situation. The Gu family had agreed to join Xianmeng, and the Sannan family had collapsed. Of course, the Chu family wouldn't bear everything, but he wanted to fight for the best interests of the Chu family. Gan Tianqing understood this better than anyone else. In an instant, Gu Yu had led Sumo, Yu Wuji, Long Wanqing, and the others into the hall. Chu Yunan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He knew Yu Wuji and Long Wanqing. They were the two most outstanding leaders of Xianmeng in the past 10,000 years. However, he had never seen Sumo before. The late stage of the breaking world? Chu Yunan couldn't help but take a deep breath. Was that black-cloved cultivator the person that Gu Yazi said could suppress the three Nans? At that moment, the ones who were the most shocked were Chu Fei and Chu Yun. They had not received the news that Sumo had come out of seclusion. It had to be known that in just 200 years, Sumo had won 2 levels in the break world. That was almost impossible. However, the impossible had happened. Chu Fei and Chu Yun stared blankly at Sumo. Sumo nodded with a smile. "Master Chu, long time no see." Yu Wuji and Long Wanqing greeted Chu Yunan first. "Alliance Leader Yu, Alliance Leader Long, how have you been?" Chu Yunan also stood up with a smile and returned the salute. However, most of his attention was on Sumo. At this moment, Chu Yun had already sent him a voice transmission. The cultivator who entered the mysterious tomb back then? Chu Yunan was also shocked. What kind of power could make a break world cultivator level up 2 levels in just 200 years? The later stage of the break world was a bottleneck. Many cultivators in the ancient Shu land dreamed of it, but they could not break through. This is City Master Su of the chaotic God land. Yuwuji introduced. Greetings, Old Chu. Sumo bowed. Greetings, City Master Su. Chu Yunan looked at Sumo seriously. He was even more surprised. The chaotic God land had such a powerful being? Plus, Sumo had an indescribable temperament that made people want to obey her. That was not the release of pressure, but an innate, nameless power. Alliance Leader Yu, Alliance Leader Long, I think you know what Old Chu wants, Gon Tianqing said with a smile. What do you think? The guest follows the host, Yuwuji said with a smile. We are in the Three Nans. Old Chu is half a master of the Gu family. As long as Old Chu is sincere, we can discuss his request. I wonder who from the Chu family will fight. Ha ha. Chu Yunan nodded. Alliance Leader Yu, you are straightforward. Except for the family master of the Chu family, my cultivation is not bad. Of course, I will fight in person to test Xianming's sincerity. Oh? Ha ha. Yuwuji nodded. As expected, Chu Yunan wanted to fight in person. In fact, among the people in Xianming, only Yuwuji could fight Chu Yunan. However, Yuwuji had to use the power that Azure Demon had given her. However, if he did that, he would probably kill Chu Yunan. If he killed Chu Yunan, it would be impossible for the Chu family to enter Xianming. So, Chu Yunan gave Xianming a difficult problem. He had to win, but he couldn't kill her. This meant that the opponent's realm was very high. As far as Chu Yunan knew, there was no such person in Xianming. At this time, Sumo smiled and took a step forward. In this fight, I will fight for Xianming. City Master Su. Chu Yunan couldn't help but smile. At the same time, she emphasized the words, City Master Su. I just said it clearly. I want to fight with people from Xianming. City Master Su, you are from the chaotic gods continent. How can you count? Ha ha. Sumo also smiled. Chu Yunan's reason was within his expectation. So, Sumo turned around and said to Yuwuji and Long Wanqing, Alliance leaders, I am in the late stage of breaking world. I want to join Xianming. I want to be an elder of Xianming. Is that okay? Yuwuji and Long Wanqing laughed at the same time. City Master Su wants to join Xianming. It is what we want, Yuwuji said and took out a token from his pocket. It was carved with Xianming. This is the token of an elder of Xianming. Sumo bowed and took it with both hands. Then, she looked at Chu Yunan with a smile. Old Chu, what do you think now? Chu Yunan didn't look angry at all. Instead, she smiled and nodded. Then, she said to Yuwuji, Alliance Leader Yu, if you don't have a proper title, you won't be able to do it. Today, I made City Master Su an elder of Xianming. Does that count as a merit in the future? When Yuwuji heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. Of course, Old Chu deserves the credit. Ha ha. Good. Elder Su, let's go outside. Chu Yunan laughed and invited. Then, she turned around and said to Gu Yazi, Brother Gu, please arrange a place for the fight. Okay, please. Gu Yazi waved his hand. The fighting field of the Gu family was in the southeast of the villa. It was a very open field. The area was covered with runes. The defense of the break world completely covered the whole area. Usually, the cultivators of the Gu family often practiced here. Everyone arrived at the field. Chu Yunan gently landed in the middle of the field, and Sumo followed. Old Chu, I have something to say, Sumo said. Elder Su, please go ahead. Chu Yunan said. Old Chu, if I lose this round, I will leave the Sannan land immediately. In the future, Sumo will not intervene in the affairs of the Sannan land. At the same time, I will give you a reincarnation-level divine weapon to show my apology. Reincarnation-level divine weapon? The Gu family, the Chu family, and even the cultivators of Xianming were shocked. because, looking at the entire ancient Shu continent, there might not be a reincarnation-level divine weapon. Ha ha. In fact, they all thought too much. Except for the 3 beggar treasures, it seemed that Sumo didn't have any reincarnation-level divine weapons. Anyway, he wouldn't lose, so he just made a big deal. When Chu Yunnan heard that, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that he was determined to win. Elder Su, what if I lose? Chu Yunnan's mind was extremely calm, because some words had to be said in advance. If old Chu loses, I will ask old Chu to promise a marriage, Sumo said with a smile. Chapter 565. A Marriage. Chu Yunnan could not help but be slightly stunned. Whose marriage? The marriage between Miss Gu Xing and Mr. Chu Fei. Sumo smiled. As soon as she said that, Gu Xing could not help but blush. Chu Fei was also a little shy. The matter between Gu Xing and Chu Fei was not a secret to the Gu family and the Chu family. However, it was the first time someone had said it in public. At this time, Gu Yazi and Gu Qingyang were both smiling. Obviously, Sumo had already discussed it with them. Otherwise, Sumo would not have brought it up rashly. When Chu Yunnan heard Sumo's words, he could not help but laugh. Elder Su, you have thought it through. Well, if you can beat me, I will propose marriage for Fei today. Besides, the girl from the Gu family is really good. As for the other affairs of the Chu family, I can also make half of the decisions. These words were said with deep meaning. However, Chu Fei's expression changed slightly. Because for a moment, he did not know whether he should hope that the first grandpa would lose or win. In fact, Chu Yunnan knew that if he lost, Sumo would want the Chu family to join the Xianming. However, Sumo did not say it directly. The marriage between the Gu family and the Chu family was a euphemistic expression. In this way, even if Chu Yunnan lost, he would take care of the face of the Chu family to the greatest extent. Now, the marriage between the Gu family and the Chu family was the best way to join the Xianming. Elder Chu, you are straightforward. Please. Sumo made an inviting gesture. In terms of realm, Sumo was better than Chu Yunnan, so he did not make the first move. In fact, if this battle was only in terms of realm, it would not make much sense. The outcome of the battle between the middle stage of the breaking world and the late stage of the breaking world was already clear. However, the people of the Chu family needed a reason. Otherwise, they would not be able to convince themselves. After all, the Sannan family had been independent of the Xianmeng for millions of years. They had their own pride and freedom. There were many things that could not be broken just because one wanted to. In the end, everything was still a battle of strength. Without a powerhouse like Sumo, the Chu family and the Gu family would never lower their heads to Xianmeng. Please. Chu Yunnan said, please, and didn't stand on ceremony at all. At this time, he knew he did not have the right to be polite. After all, he was only in the middle stage of the break world. In an instant, Chu Yunnan flew up and flicked his long sleeve. A break world power went toward Sumo. It was a very common magic art, but Chu Yunnan had practiced it to the extreme. Ordinary moves also had the power to kill. That was enough to kill an early-stage break world god. Chu Yunnan did not hold back at all. From the start of the first move, he went all out. In the arena, a strong gust of wind rose. Even with the break world protection, the entire battleground was buzzing. The cultivators watching the battle held their breath. Although it was just a battle that might not result in life and death, the battle between them represented the highest level of the ancient Shu continent. The hurricane was like a knife and the sleeves were like clouds. However, Sumo's face did not change. She still wore a smile. Fundamentally speaking, with Sumo's combat capability, cultivators below the extermination sea realm could not pose much of a threat to him. Plus, Chu Yunnan was only in the middle stage of the break world. Sumo waved one hand and used the same move to fight back against Chu Yunnan. It was a competition of absolute power. Boom, the two powers collided. Colorful lights splashed everywhere, and the sound was like thunder. If the battlegrounds array did not dissolve most of the sound would have echoed all over the Red Desert. Even so, the entire Red City was still filled with thunder-like roars. The cultivators in the Red City could not help but look in the direction of the Gu family's villa. They looked again. In the battleground, Chu Yunan's body was moving backward to dissolve the opponent's power. Sumo was standing on the ground, looking calm. She did not move at all. This time, Sumo obviously had the upper hand. Chu Yunan was shocked. At the same time, the spell in her hand changed. Sizzle, sizzle, he grabbed the air with one hand, and an illusionary long spear appeared in his hand. The long spear was shining, and the colorful lights were dazzling. Condensed chi into a weapon. That was a very advanced fighting technique. The whole long spear was actually condensed by the power of the break world. Such a god weapon was not as hard as a refined god weapon, but its flexibility and control were far better than ordinary god weapons. Plus, not every break world cultivator could raise a god weapon like that. Such a god weapon could not be formed without 10,000 years of nourishment. Elder Su, I am sorry, Chu Yunan said. Then, he raised the long spear in his hand and thrust it toward Sumo's chest. That long spear had already formed a vortex in the air. The power of this move was 2 or 3 times stronger than the previous one. The long spear broke the air, and it was unstoppable. All the cultivators watching the battle were weighing whether they could block this move. Except for Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji, among all the cultivators present, only Gu Yazi was confident that she could take this move. As for the rest, they didn't think they could withstand one move from Chu Yunan. Sumo also praised in her heart, the cultivators of the Sannan family are indeed extraordinary. Chu Yunan was the top expert of the Sannan family. However, Sumo was still calm. He turned his body slightly, but he was as fast as lightning. In the void, there was almost only a shadow of Sumo. The vortex brought by the long spear seemed to sweep past Sumo. However, Sumo was not affected at all. At the same time, Sumo's hand shook, and the broken bamboo pole appeared in his hand. Since Chu Yunan used a weapon, Sumo did not want him to lose too badly. Whoosh, Sumo shook his wrist, and the broken bamboo pole directly pointed at Chu Yunan's long spear. This move was very interesting. As for the broken bamboo pole, Sumo did not know its origin, but his 3 beggar treasures were all peerless divine weapons. Because no matter how high Sumo's realm was, those 3 treasures seemed to be suitable for him. Puff! Sumo's speed was so fast that Chu Yunan had no time to change his move. The broken bamboo pole happened to touch Chu Yunan's long spear. When the two collided, there was no sound of explosion. The broken bamboo pole directly pierced through Chu Yunan's long spear like a knife cutting through tofu. Huh! Chu Yunan was shocked. Because it meant that the bamboo pole in Sumo's hand should be at least a samsara-level magic treasure. In fact, this move was enough for Sumo to shatter Chu Yunan's long spear and seriously injure Chu Yunan's divine soul. However, Chu Yunan did not expect that Sumo would leave as soon as he touched it. All of a sudden, Sumo's figure retreated swiftly, like moving clouds and flowing water. In the eyes of many cultivators, it was as if Sumo's bamboo pole had been shaken off by Chu Yunan's long spear. Outside the arena, Gu Yazi could not help but sigh. Fortunately, the Gu family chose to join Xianmeng. Otherwise, Suemo would have been able to flatten the Gu family by himself. Because according to the situation just now, it could be said that Sumo had won. However, he was still giving face to the Chu family. Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji looked as usual, because everything was within their expectations. If the current Suemo could not handle such a battle with ease, then he would not be worthy of being called the Demon Lord or the Dark Lord. At this moment, Chu Yunan raised his eyebrows and his expression changed slightly. In an instant, the long spear in his hand disappeared. Because this spear was useless. At the same time, he formed a special spell. Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant, a clear pool appeared under Chu Yunan's feet. Tianhu? The cultivators of the Gu family could not help but change their expressions. Chapter 566. The Chu family called the Tianhu Lake the Sacred Lake. It was a big lake with a radius of 800 miles. However, it was usually calm and tranquil. If one looked down from the sky, the Tianhu Lake was like a bright mirror embedded in the land of the south of Chuan. Therefore, the lake was also called the Divine Mirror of the Tianhu Lake. The Tianhu Lake was the biggest support of the Chu family. The water of the Tianhu Lake contained endless spirit power. People could get twice the result with half the effort if they cultivated there. Countless cultivators of the Chu family had used the Tianhu Lake to reach the Great Path. Many rare treasures had appeared in the Tianhu Lake. The Chu family had benefited a lot. The Tianhu Lake was magical. The people of the ancient Shu only knew how wide it was, but they didn't know how deep it was. It was said that the Tianhu Lake was unfathomable. No one knew where it was connected to. The Chu family had a secret skill that connected them to the Tianhu Lake and instantly gained power. However, only the top cultivators of the Chu family could use that skill. Chu Yunan was, of course, the top cultivator of the Chu family. That was why his skill connected to the Tianhu Lake. In other words, he had captured the water of the Tianhu Lake. Chu Yunan shouted, using the Tianhu Lake, divine mirror attaching to the soul. Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant, the small Tianhu Lake under Chu Yunan's feet suddenly surged and formed a deep whirlpool. Inside the whirlpool, there seemed to be thousands of power pouring into Chu Yunan's Yongquan acupuncture point. Sizzle, sizzle, the spirit power could make sounds and even take shape. At the same time, the hazy water vapor covered Chu Yunan. Looking at him again, his aura had changed. His realm and power had increased in an instant. The middle stage of the breaking world, the late stage of the breaking world, and the complete breaking world. The scene left all the cultivators at the scene dumbfounded. The Gu family had only heard that the Chu family had the ability to connect to the Tianhu Lake and borrow the power of the Tianhu Lake, but they didn't know the details. The Chu family knew the secret skill, but it was the first time they had seen a member of the Chu family increase his realm by two small realms like Chu Yunan. After all, the Sannan family had been living in peace, and no one could force Chu Yunan to use such a powerful skill. Xianming's people didn't expect the Chu family to have such a powerful secret method. Yu Wuji frowned slightly. This kind of secret technique had long existed in the three realms, and the most famous was Shun Yan's secret technique. In the past, Shun Yan had borrowed the power of the supreme ghost god's face, and at the cost of her lifespan, she had even been able to advance several realms. However, Chu Yunan's Dharma spells seemed gentler and not as overbearing as Shun Yan's. However, both of them achieved the same result through different means. Sumo looked at everything. Although she was fearless, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Chu Yunan was serious about it. It seemed that Chu Yunan didn't want to be defeated no matter what. In fact, the Chu family had already thought of joining Xianming, but Chu Yunan still had her own pride in front of victory. This was probably the most powerful secret technique of the Chu family. If Chu Yunan couldn't defeat Sumo with the help of the divine mirror of Tianhu, there was no other way. However, this kind of Dharma spells was nothing in Sumo's eyes. In Sumo's memory, he could use at least dozens of methods to forcibly increase his realm, but it was not necessary. Because this kind of forcible increase came with a price. Most of the time, the loss outweighed the gain. Whoosh, at this time, Chu Yunan made a seal again. The lake water under his feet suddenly rose more than 10 feet. Although it was just a pool of water, there was an endless supply of water. Tianhu, dragon trap! Chu Yunan shouted again. The lake water turned into several water dragons, circled up in the blink of an eye, and directly entangled Sumo. The lake water contained endless power to break through the boundary. Ha ha! Sumo's eyebrows relaxed, and then he smiled slightly. Elder Chu, I'm sorry. When he looked again, Sumo's body rose into the air and went straight to the void. And the lake water that Chu Yunnan summoned followed like a shadow, chasing after her. Sizzle! The speed of the lake water seemed to be faster, and in an instant it entangled Sumo's feet and calves. It was like many water ribbons, trying to tie up Sumo and pull him down into the void. Sumo looked calm, and he had already made a seal. In terms of the profoundness of the Dharma spells, no one in the whole Pure Land could compare with Sumo, let alone Chu Yunnan. Netherworld. All rivers returned to the sea. It was a Dharma spell of the Netherworld Lord. When he looked again, black light suddenly appeared on Sumo's body, especially his legs, which emitted endless black light. At that moment, it seemed that Chu Yunnan's water dragon had fixed Sumo in the void dozens of feet high. However, only Chu Yunnan knew that it was actually Sumo who had pulled his water dragon in the void. Chu Yunnan wanted to pull back the water dragon and even cut it off. However, Sumo did not give him that chance. Chu Yunnan did not understand why he was still no match for Sumo in terms of power, even though he had the upper hand in terms of his realm. There seemed to be endless power in Sumo's body, which was as endless as the sea. The power of immortality and the soul of immortality. Chu Yunnan could not compete with it at all. The most frightening thing was that Chu Yunnan suddenly felt that his power was constantly fading away. Sumo's Dharma spell could absorb his power. Whoosh, splash. The water of the heavenly lake had been slightly green. However, everyone could clearly see that the water dragon, which was dozens of feet long, was turning black at a speed visible to the naked eye from under Sumo's feet. The cultivators of the Chu family all turned pale. At that moment, Chu Yunnan's soul was greatly shaken. Because Sumo had not only frozen the power of his heavenly lake, but he was also absorbing the power of the heavenly lake. However, Chu Yunnan was completely unable to cut it off at this moment. He was completely controlled by Sumo's power. He could not do anything. Whoosh, splash. The water dragon turned into a black dragon. Chu Yunnan's realm began to drop rapidly. Perfect breaking world, late breaking world, middle breaking world. That scene once again shocked all the ancient Shu cultivators. It was a complete reversal of the previous advancement process. Even Yu Wuji and Gan Tianqing were surprised. They could only sigh in their hearts. The Netherworld's secret technique was truly profound. Fortunately, after Chu Yunnan's level dropped to the middle stage of the break world, it did not drop any further. Otherwise, his cultivation would be crippled by Sumo. Sumo had shown mercy by only drawing the power of the Tianhu Lake that Chu Yunnan had borrowed. However, the lake under Chu Yunnan's feet had also turned black in an instant. 3 to 5 breaths of time was fine. However, after 5 breaths, the lake under Chu Yunnan's feet began to shrink. The members of the Chu family looked very pale, and Chu Yunnan turned pale with fright. The power of the divine mirror of the heavenly lake was inexhaustible. The lake under Chu Yunnan's feet was a miniature version of the Tianhu Lake. Sumo was drawing the real water of the Tianhu Lake, which was theoretically impossible, because it was enough to kill a cultivator in the break world. Even a cultivator in the extermination sea could not do that, let alone a cultivator in the break world. However, at this time, Sumo was floating in the void, safe and sound. That scene was too terrifying. According to the situation, it would not take long for Sumo to completely drain the water of the Tianhu Lake through Chu Yunnan. I admit defeat. Chu Yunnan shouted directly. He did not dare to bet the entire Tianhu Lake. The corners of Sumo's mouth curled up when he heard that. Right at this moment, the space outside the martial arts arena fluctuated violently. Then, a cultivator covered in blood rushed out. Ancestral Master, the Chu family is in danger. The cultivator shouted and fell to the ground. His blood splashed all over the ground. Chapter 567. Suemo was the winner of this battle. because Chu Yunnan had admitted defeat just now. But at the last moment, everyone was shocked by the cultivator who barged in. The Gu family's villa was not a place that could be entered casually. Besides, it was a cultivator who was covered in blood. He must have used a special teleportation technique to enter the Chu family. At this time, Chu Fei's movements were extremely fast because he clearly saw who that cultivator was. Chu Shan. Chu Fei flew over and carried Chu Shan in his arms, ignoring the fact that he was covered in blood. Then, he pressed his Dan Si with one hand and poured divine burial qi into it. However, Chu Fei's expression changed drastically. Chu Shan's Dan Si had been shattered. There was nothing he could do. "Big brother, you don't have to save me." Chu Shan used the divine burial qi to open his eyes, but he was already on the verge of death. The Yin Mountain Lin clan has attacked the Chu family. Go back. At this point, Chu Shan took his last breath. Chu Shan was an outstanding third-generation disciple of the Chu family. He was an early-stage divine burial qi cultivator. But his Dan Si had been shattered by someone's spiritual power. No one knew how he managed to escape and make it to the Gu family's villa. However, the battle with the Chu family was bound to be tragic. The Yin clan had attacked the Chu family. This was something that many cultivators had not expected. Moreover, the battle between the two families was enough to alarm the entire Shu South. However, the Gu family had not received any news. There was only one possibility. An extremely powerful cultivator had used absolute power to seal off the entire area controlled by the Chu family. That was terrifying. "Everyone, the family is in an emergency. Everything will be discussed later. I'll take my leave." Chu Yunnan's eyes were bloodshot. Breaking out of the encirclement and sending a message meant that the Chu family was in danger. The Chu family could not even send a message through the teleportation array. Otherwise, there was no need for this. Chu Shan was an early-stage divine burial qi cultivator. Moreover, the Chu family had Realmbreaker. Could they not send a message? The Yin clan? Chu Yunnan's face tensed up. In fact, they had only been away from the Chu family for 3 days. The actions of the Yin family could be said to be as swift as lightning. In fact, if this was the case, they would be of limited use even if they returned. However, Chu Yunnan would rather die than go back and fight. "Elder Chu, please wait a moment." Gu Yazi stopped Chu Yunnan and then turned to Gu Qingyang, saying, "Qingyang, pass the order immediately. All the god-bearing realm cultivators of the Gu family in the manor immediately gathered. After that, you'll personally lead the troops to reinforce the Chu family. I'm going to oversee Red City." The Yin clan had made a move on the Chu family, and they might even make a move on the Gu family. Yes. Gu Qingyang did not hesitate and immediately disappeared to gather the troops. "Thank you." Chu Yunnan cupped her hands towards Gu Yazi and said nothing. At this time, there was no need to say anything. The Chu family definitely needed help. At this time, Yu Wuji had already spread the news of the attack on the Chu family through the array. It could be said that this was explosive news. The Sannan family had coexisted for millions of years. Although there had been some small disagreements, there had been almost no large-scale conflicts between the families. The Gu family, the Chu family, and the Yin family had always had a good relationship, supporting each other. The situation of the Sannan family was very balanced. Sumo's arrival and Gan Tianqing's awakening broke this balance in a sense. However, the Gu family had never thought of dominating the whole family. In fact, the Chu family hadn't either. Unfortunately, the Yin clan of Cold Mountain was different. Back then, Gu Yu was right, the Yin clan of Cold Mountain had always been secretly nurturing their power, full of ambition. The Gu family and the Chu family were slightly on guard. However, neither the Chu family nor the Gu family had expected the Yin clan to act so quickly. "Elder Chu, our people from Xianmeng will go with you. At the same time, I've already notified Xianmeng that the two immortal families closest to the Sannan family will reinforce the Gu family and the Chu family as soon as possible, said Alliance Master Yu. Sigh. Chu Yunan let out a long sigh. Alliance Master Yu, Elder Su, thank you. As long as our Chu family doesn't perish, we will definitely join Xianmeng. If we perish, the Chu family will also remember this kindness. Elder Chu, don't worry, Yu Wuji said, let's go first. The Yin clan of Cold Mountain can't swallow the Chu family so quickly. However, if we arrive earlier, one less member of the Chu family might die. Alright. Elder Chu nodded. At this time, all the soul burial cultivators in the Gu family villa had gathered. Including Gu Qingyang, Gu Yu, and Gu Xing, the Gu family had a total of 20 people. This was almost all the elites of the Gu family. Gu Yazi didn't make a move. If the Yin clan attacked, he, Gu Xingzi, and the two ancestors were enough to resist. Gu Yu and Gu Xing directly opened the strongest teleportation formation in Red City. Sumo, Yu Wuji, Chu Yunan, Gan Tianqing, and the others directly entered the formation and went straight to Tianhu. Tianhu, the Chu family. Among the Sannan families, the Chu family was in the middle, the Gu family in the west, and the Yin clan in the east. Their respective territories were measured in millions of square kilometers, which could be said to be extremely vast. Each of their territories had a different number of Hongqian families, and these families were all dependent on them. The relationship between the Sannan families and them was similar to the relationship between a king and a vassal. The other families of the three major families followed their lead. However, these families had a lot of autonomy. That day, Chu Yunan took Chu Fei, Chu Yun, and the others to the Gu family, which was the decision of the entire Chu family. Before that, they had actually made all kinds of plans and speculated about all kinds of possibilities. Chu Yunan could make the decision on behalf of the Chu family, and the Chu family could represent the other Hongqian families. However, they only speculated about the current situation of the Gu family, but ignored the Yin clan of Cold Mountain. Everything happened too suddenly. One of the most important factors was that a Hongqian family closest to the Cold Mountain, the Hao family, had betrayed the Chu family. The Hao family was adjacent to the Yin mountain, and it was an important family of the Chu family. Usually, this family was responsible for guarding the Yin clan of Cold Mountain and even the affairs of the eastern side of the Chu family. However, the Yin clan of Cold Mountain had secretly broken through this obstacle. The Hao family had been a chess piece of the Yin clan for a long time. With the Hao family as a spy, the eastern gate of the Chu family was opened wide. The night Chu Yunan and the others left the Chu family, the Yin clan had secretly crossed the boundary between the two families. They secretly gathered in the territory of the Hao family. There were two mountains north and south of the Sky Lake. They were called Wang Lake. South Wang Lake and North Wang Lake. They were the cultivation places of the Chu family. That night it was dusk. The people of the Hao family took the lead. The Chu family did not guard against them, and they killed the guards of the Sky Lake array with lightning speed. The people of the Yin clan were teleported to the edge of the Sky Lake. The three guests of the Yin clan were there. In addition, there were 4 Break World cultivators. Aside from them, the most important person was the black-clothed old man who had come back from the Bitter Wheel Sea on a wooden boat. He was a true Break World cultivator. As soon as he left the array, he took out something and stuck it next to the Sky Lake. "Children, if you don't surrender, kill." The black-clothed old man coldly smiled. His eyes were full of bloodthirst. Chapter 568. Whoosh whoosh, kill. In an instant, the 3,000 elite Yin family cultivators dispersed. Battle cries soared to the sky. The black-robed old man coldly stood where he was, not moving at all. At that moment, his black robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like a god of death. With him as the center, layers of black clouds covered the entire Chu family. In the sky above the Sky Lake and the South Gazing Lake, a layer of indistinct black mist had formed. And the thing he had stuck into the side of the lake was actually a wooden stick. The wooden stick was completely black, and the part that was exposed to the surface was no more than a foot or so long. On the surface of the wooden stick, strange runes flowed. It was a special magic treasure. Under its effect, the entire lake seemed to have frozen into a thin layer of black ice. At this moment, all the cultivators of the Chu family were startled awake. However, in such a short time, they still couldn't figure out what was going on. The 3,000 cultivators of the Yin family were like eagles in the night sky, swooping down on their prey. The 4 Break World cultivators of the Yin family were like 4 giant axes. They broke the Chu family. It was already as bright as day on the North and South Lookout Lake. The mystic lights of all kinds of magical treasures were as bright as stars. However, if one were to look at the periphery of the core area of the Chu family, they would only see a faint layer of black clouds. The Tianhu Lake and the Gazing Lake Mountain were separated by a magical barrier. The Yin clan had always been the strongest among the Sanan clans. However, the Chu family was not weak either. Everyone knew the Yin family had 8 break worlds. The Chu family had 6. Chu Yunnan went to the Gu family as a diplomatic envoy. Theoretically, the Chu family had at least 5 break world elite. Strangely, at this moment, no break world cultivator from the Chu family came out to fight. The most powerful member of the Chu family was only at the peak of the Burying God stage. Thus, it became a massacre. In front of Break World, they could not withstand a single blow. That night was a catastrophe that the Chu family had never experienced in the past millions of years. On the North and South Lookout Lake, blood flowed like a river. The cultivators of the Chu family fell one after another like crops being harvested. There were nearly 20,000 cultivators in the Chu family, but in less than 4 hours, more than half of them had died. Hee hee. Almost none of the cultivators of the Chu family surrendered. Regardless of their realms, their eyes were bloodshot. At the last moment, countless cultivators chose to self-detonate. All of this could be said to be tragic and stirring. The black-robed elder of the Yin clan hadn't moved, but a faint smile appeared on his face. Everything was going according to his plan and control. At the same time, all of the Chu family's soul energy gathered into the wooden stick in front of him. Then, through the wooden stick's transformation, it turned into sealing power. The layer of black ice on the lake seemed to be getting thicker and thicker. At this moment, the 400-kilometer-wide lake had completely turned into a black mirror. The black-robed old man looked at the heavenly lake and smiled. Chu Tianlang, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to see me again. However, being buried in the heavenly lake is a worthy death. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed old man threw his head back and laughed. As he laughed, the cultivators of the Chu family continued to be slaughtered. Crack, crack. At that moment, a crack suddenly appeared on the black ice of the Tianhu Lake. Under the heavenly lake, there seemed to be some kind of power surging, trying to break the ice. The black-robed old man smiled coldly. It seemed that the people of the Chu family were quite capable. Under such a seal, he was still able to break out of the ice? At this moment, the black-robed old man's cold smile grew. Crack, whoosh, at this moment, the center of the heavenly lake suddenly exploded, and a figure broke the ice. The world-breaking chi instantly dispersed. A tall and burly cultivator rushed out. The middle stage of the world-breaking chi. Chu Tianlang. The black-robed old man raised his eyebrows and humphed coldly. With this cold snort, he had already made his move. He made a grabbing motion with one hand, and 3 black spears materialized in the air. This was much better than Chu Yunnan's condensed chi into a weapon. Kill. The 3 black spears all carried the power of the world-breaking chi. They stabbed at Chu Tianlang from 3 different directions. At this time, the ice under Chu Tianlang's feet suddenly closed again. It wasn't that the cultivators of the Chu family under the heavenly lake didn't want to break the ice, but that they weren't strong enough. Just now, they had to work together to break the ice and send Chu Tianlang out. The other cultivators under the heavenly lake were still trapped inside. Soldier, you're not dead? Chu Tianlang was furious. At the same time, he took out a treasure. It was a black mountain rock. The rock expanded in the wind and turned into a small mountain in an instant. Boom, crack, the 3 spears hit the small mountain. Spiritual chi scattered and colorful lights shot into the sky. As for the black mountain, it was shaking incessantly. Chu Tianlang's expression changed. The black mountain was a treasure of the Chu family. Ha ha! If you don't die, how can I die? Today we will settle the score for what happened in the heaven ditch back then. I came back alive and you're not dead. Let your entire family die with you. Technique, Soul's Rage. The soldier's black robe billowed. He raised his hands, but it wasn't a hand seal. Instead, he put his hands forward like a zombie. At the same time, the soldier's eyes turned gray. Suddenly, the air around the heavenly lake was filled with a strange aura of death. A cold wind blew, and ghosts cried and wolves howled. Chu Tianlang's expression changed. It wasn't a power he could resist. A cultivator at the world-breaking chi level could crush the entire ancient Shu continent. Moreover, the soldier's aura was too special. Soldier, you're not a real cultivator? You're dead, Chu Tianlang shouted, his eyes filled with fear. Then, an endless aura of death rushed toward him like countless whirling dragons. Chu Tianlang knew that he would definitely fall in this battle. When he looked again, Chu Tianlang bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of soul blood. Whoosh, blood mist filled the air. The golden-red soul blood scattered like stars in the sky. Suppress! Chu Tianlang shouted. The blood mist dispersed, blocking the dragon-like aura of death. However, he knew that it could only last for a moment. Chu Tianlang formed another Taoist technique. Boom, crack, the black mountain hovering above his head buzzed and then exploded. This once again formed a shock wave that spread outwards like a water wheel. However, self-preservation or injury were not Chu Tianlang's goals. The reason for that was because a figure had appeared from within the black mountain. At the same time, a strange teleportation formation appeared beneath his feet. The soldier raised an eyebrow. He didn't expect a young cultivator to be hiding in the Chu family's treasure. It was Chu Shan. However, everything happened in an instant. The almighty members of the Chu family under the Tianhu Lake had already prepared for the worst. So, when Chu Tianlang broke the ice, he had already prepared for the worst. The Chu family had to send the news out. Otherwise, the north and south gazing lakes and mountains would be destroyed. None of the Chu family members here would be able to survive. Humph! Shenbing snorted coldly, then waved his hand. An extremely strong power of a perfect world breaker formed a 7-foot-long sword that headed toward Chu Shan. However, Chu Tianlang moved to block in front of Chu Shan. Puff! Chu Tianlang's body was pierced, but the sword's power did not diminish. It went on to hit Chu Shan. However, Chu Tianlang's blocking had consumed some of the black sword's power. Even so, Chu Shan groaned, but he was still teleported out. He was the Chu family's last hope. Chapter 569. Boom. Bang. Chu Shan's figure disappeared, and the formation closed. The soldier wanted to give chase, but it was too late. He could not help but raise his eyebrows as he glared viciously at Chu Tianlang, who was frozen in midair. The soldier's eyes were still gray. Chu Tianlang's organs had been destroyed, but he still had a breath of immortal chi. Old monster, you are already a corpse. Chu Tianlang used the last of his strength to clench his teeth and glared at the soldier. Chu Tianlang, I may be a corpse, but I am also a corpse that will bury your entire Chu family. Don't die yet. I want you to witness the destruction of the Chu family. Seal. A strange smile appeared on Yinshinbing's face as he waved his hand. The power of the seal froze Chu Tianlang in the air again. However, this time, his entire body seemed to be pressed into a flat space. Chu Tianlang's soul was sealed by the Yin soldier. However, his senses were still there. Chu Tianlang would not die in a short while, but once the seal was broken, Chu Tianlang would not die. Once the seal was broken, he would die immediately. To Chu Tianlang, it was a form of torture. Old Yin monster, you will die a horrible death. Chu Tianlang cursed. Ha! Didn't you say that I'm dead? I will die a good death now. The Yin soldier's expression was as ferocious as a zombie's. Kill my children, kill every single member of the Chu family. I want their souls to nourish my sacred tree. Who can stop the blooming of the sacred tree? Ha ha, ha ha. The Yin soldier seemed to have lost his mind. Meanwhile, the Yin family's massacre of the Chu family was still ongoing. On the north-south Lookout Lake, all the god-burying cultivators of the Chu family were killed. Now, the Chu family's 4 Break World warriors were behind Yin soldier. Because the remaining Chu family cultivators no longer needed to be personally dealt with. The dead souls of the Chu family members poured into the strange black stick. The radiance of the black wood stick became brighter and brighter. At the same time, the ice on the lake of the Chu family was getting thicker and thicker. There was nothing wrong with the Yin soldier's information. The Chu family's Break World cultivators practiced in the Sky Lake all year round. People said the Chu family had caves and palaces under the Sky Lake. Every once in a while, the Chu family would select a few direct disciples to enter the Tianhu Lake to cultivate. Therefore, the Yin soldier chose to seal the lake as soon as he arrived. Chu Tianlang was sealed in the void, his heart filled with endless sorrow. As the patriarch with the highest seniority in the Chu family, he could only watch helplessly as the Chu family was annihilated. That kind of torture was unimaginable, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, he hoped that the last elites of the Chu family would not break the ice and come out. Chu Shan did not know if he could call for help. None of them could stop the Yin soldier. Perfect Break World. Actually, he was an existence that was invincible in the ancient Shu continent. Chu Tianlang did not know what had happened to the Yin soldier, but he could feel the death aura of the Yin soldier. Back in the sky ditch, he had seen the Yin soldier fall into the sky ditch to fight for a treasure. Theoretically, he should have died. The Yin soldier must have had a miracle. Sizzle! Sizzle! At this time, the black wood stick stuck in the Sky Lake made a sizzling sound. Countless souls looked like they were being fried. The black wood had grown more than a foot. The Yin soldier's eyes were no longer gray, but his gaze was still cold. Set up the formation. The battle cries of the North and South View Lake had died down. The undying and burying god-class cultivators of the Chu family had been slaughtered. Although the battle was still going on, there was not much energy left. So, the Yin soldier gave a new order. Yes, sir. The 4 Break World cultivators replied at the same time. Then, they disappeared at the same time. In an instant, they were floating in the sky above the Sky Lake. North, south, east, and west, they were about 300 miles away from each other. They stood at the 4 corners of the Sky Lake. They were all Break World cultivators, and all of them were in the middle stage of the Break World. With such power, even without the Yin soldier, they were the strongest in the Sannan family. To them, 300 miles was about the same as 30 feet for mortals. Looking again, they began to form hand seals. However, each of their hand seals were different. The hand seals were very strange. At this time, the Yin soldier also started to make hand seals. Divine wood, rise! The Yin soldier shouted. As he made the hand seals, the wood stick stuck in the ground slowly rose. Countless runes flowed on its surface. It really looked like a divine wood. It was about 3 feet long, the length of an ordinary deity's sword. Buzz, 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 it vibrated gently and made a strange sound. Then, the black wood stick floated in the air, and slowly moved to the center of the sky lake. The whole process took a long time. The world outside the seal was bright. However, the Chu family was still inside the seal. Chu Tianlang watched everything unfold. He did not know what the Yin soldier was planning. However, he knew that the Yin soldier was preparing a spell. At that moment, the sky lake was covered in a thick layer of ice. It looked like a black, dead lake. The Chu family cultivators at the bottom of the lake did not seem to have the ability to break through the ice. They could not break through. However, judging from the Yin soldier's plan, he would not let the Chu family cultivators in the sky lake go. He was preparing a big spell. The 4 cultivators landed in the middle with the black wooden stick in the middle. The Yin soldier's hand seals changed again. At the same time, his eyes returned to their previous grayish-white appearance. Chu Tianlang, I'm going to show you a great show. I'm going to drain this sky lake and destroy the Chu family cultivators. This divine wood will help me conquer the 3 south regions and conquer the ancient Shu. Ha whoosh, as the Yin soldier cast his spell, a gust of wind blew in the air. The surface of the sky lake was covered with wisps of black gas. The black gas must have been extracted from the sky lake. They gradually floated upwards, strand by strand, and finally gathered at the bottom of the black wood. It was absorbing the power of the sky lake. Chu Tianlang's eyes were filled with fear. Although the speed of absorption was not fast, it was much faster than the Chu family cultivators' daily cultivation. That was because the spiritual energy had taken shape. In fact, Chu Tianlang did not have the chance to witness the battle between Sumo and Chu Yunnan. If he had, he would have thought that the Yin soldier's spell was not worth mentioning. However, he had to admit that the Yin soldier's spell was similar to Sumo's. Whoosh, a gust of wind rose above the sky lake. 2 hours later, the blackwood stick did not grow any longer. Instead, it became thicker. It was absorbing the power of the sky lake. As it grew, the speed at which it absorbed the power of the sky lake increased. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. 6 hours later, the blackwood grew into a small black tree that was 3 feet tall. The red leaves were extremely glaring. The leaves looked like they were dyed with blood. However, none of the cultivators present recognized the tree. Chapter 570. Above the lake, spirit light rippled. Gradually, the strange tree began to flourish with leaves. The Yin soldier had a strange smile on his face. The other 4 break-world cultivators of the Yin clan were guarding the area. Chu Tianlang felt that his consciousness was starting to blur. He knew his soul was going to be destroyed, but he still struggled to see what was happening. Even if it was a form of torture, the power of the entire heavenly lake was continuously pouring into the strange tree. After an unknown number of hours, boom! Suddenly, the heavenly lake sank. It sounded like the surface of the lake was sinking. The surface of the lake seemed to have dropped by 1 foot. Huh! The Yin soldier was shocked. This was not what he had expected. The sinking of the lake meant that its water level had dropped, and its power was being absorbed. However, the Yin soldier did not expect the holy tree to be so overbearing. The speed at which it was absorbing the power of the lake was beyond his imagination. Strangely, the holy tree did not seem to be growing at a rapid pace. The holy tree was still growing at a slow pace. However, as he was not very familiar with the divine tree, he did not know much about it. The Yin soldier did not pay much attention to it. Everything was going according to his plan. The holy tree was only growing a little faster. The spirit chi of the lake was still gathering. Boom! Boom! Following that, 2 icy voices rang out from the sky lake. The 4 break-world cultivators of the Yin clan looked around. The lake had shrunk a lot. It looked like it was about 100 miles wide. What kind of power was that? At that moment, the holy tree seemed to have grown a foot taller. However, the Yin soldier was still shocked by the rate at which the holy tree was being consumed. Fortunately, the cold sounds did not come again. From the looks of it, That was the special stage where the divine wood was absorbing the power of the heavenly lake. Everything returned to its original state. There was nothing strange happening in the lake. At that moment, there were not many screams on the north-south lake mountain. Almost 20,000 Chu family cultivators had been killed. There were some Chu family cultivators who were lucky enough to survive, but no one knew where they were hiding. The Yin clan's cultivators were still cleaning up the remnant. Looking from afar, the south-gazing lake and north-gazing mountain were covered in blood mist. Regardless of whether the cultivators at the bottom of the Tianhu Lake could survive this battle, the Chu family, which had stood in the south of Chuan province for millions of years, was almost annihilated. This was probably the biggest tragedy in the history of the ancient Shu continent. The Yin family cultivators continued to gather around the heavenly lake. The Yin family's 3 guests and the other Yin family's god of burial had already returned. They were all standing behind Yin soldier. They were no longer needed in other battles. More than 20 burial gods and 5 break worlds were gathered there. Compared to the Chu family, the Yin clan's casualties were almost negligible. They were all waiting for the divine tree to change. After quite some time, the divine tree had already grown to about 7 feet. Its branches were more numerous and its leaves were more luxuriant. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, an extremely beautiful blood-red flower bloomed. Red leaves, red flowers. That tree seemed to have come from the depths of hell. It was a strange flower. Other than Yin soldier, even the other cultivators of the Yin clan felt that it was ominous. Chu Tianlang was still trying his best to keep his eyes open. He seemed to have seen that flower in the heavenly gutter before. However, it was not a tree back then. It was just scattered petals. However, Chu Tianlang did not know what kind of flower it was. Sizzle, as the red flower bloomed, the spirit qi absorbed from the heavenly lake began to turn from black to red. The wisps of red spirit qi were like rays of blood-red light. The flower on the tree gradually bloomed, and it looked as if it was dripping blood. Yin soldier's lips curled up again. Then, he changed the hand seal in his hand. Boom! Looking again, the 7-foot-tall divine tree began to slowly descend. It was originally floating about 1,000 feet above the heavenly lake. Now it was slowly descending. Its roots began to grow at a crazy rate. The roots spread out in all directions. They were blood-red in color, strand by strand. The tree was 7 feet tall, but its roots were hundreds of feet long. The divine tree descended bit by bit. In the end, the tree was only 7 to 8 feet above the surface of the heavenly lake. Its roots had already spread throughout the entire heavenly lake. At that moment, it was as if the entire heavenly lake had nourished the divine tree. Both the Yin clan cultivators and Chu Tianlang were deeply shocked by the scene in front of them. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew over the heavenly lake again. The divine tree swayed gently. Instantly, blood splattered all over the sky. Its flowers began to wither. The blood splattered and floated in the air. Above the heavenly lake, between the heavenly lake and the mountains, there were red flowers floating in the air. An extremely sorrowful and ominous aura spread along with the scattering of the red flowers. Ha 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 ha! At that moment, the Yin soldier laughed maniacally. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his grayish-white eyes were filled with a cold blood-red light. The divine tree blooms, and the blood souls return. Awaken, my spirit warriors who have been dormant for tens of thousands of years. The Yin soldier's hand seal changed again. At that moment, he was like a demon, but also like a god. The Yin clan cultivators felt a chill run down their spine. Crack boom! The divine tree suddenly sank. The black ice on the heavenly lake completely shattered. The roots of the divine tree were like sharp hooks and swords that pierced deep into the heavenly lake. Gurgle a gurgle. The roots were like blood vessels that were absorbing the last bit of energy from the heavenly lake. Looking at the scene, Chu Tianlang felt as if he was being dismembered piece by piece. The ice on the heavenly lake shattered. However, not a single cultivator from the Chu family managed to escape from the heavenly lake. That might mean that they had all died under the heavenly lake. The water level of the heavenly lake began to drop. Although it was not as serious as before, the surface area of the heavenly lake was also shrinking. Ha 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 ha! The Een soldier's laughter was still echoing in the air. When the red flowers fell, the strange divine tree actually bore fruit. Those fruits were oval in shape. They were only the size of eggs, but half of them were black and the other half were red. There were at least a few hundred fruits on the tree. Red and black light surrounded them. Dead soul fruit. Chu Tianlong's eyes widened. He was shocked beyond belief, because when he saw the fruit, he finally recalled an ancient legend from the ancient Shu continent. The ancient Shu had an end, and the heavenly chasm was boundless. Throughout the ages, countless cultivators from the ancient Shu had died in the heavenly chasm. However, no one knew what was at the bottom of the heavenly chasm, and what happened to those cultivators who died in the heavenly chasm. Those who fell into the heavenly chasm were dead for sure. That was common knowledge. However, there was an ancient legend in the ancient Shu. Those cultivators who died in the heavenly chasm would one day turn into dead soul fruits and return to the mortal world. They would carry the will of God and devour the entire mainland. However, no one had ever believed that legend, just like how mortals did not believe in reincarnation. Wake up! I am a soul warrior. On behalf of God, I will bring you back to the mortal world. The Een soldier clasped his hands together and bowed in the direction of the heavenly chasm. Boom, crack! The first fruit on the dead soul tree suddenly exploded. An extremely powerful and vicissitude aura permeated the air. Chapter 571. The dead soul fruit bloomed and the air of death spread. A middle-aged cultivator wearing a red and black cloak stood next to the dead soul tree. The middle-aged cultivator was tall and had long black hair. His face was angular, and he looked like a statue. However, his eyes were gray and there was no sign of life. He looked like a corpse. At the same time, his body emitted a break-world aura. Middle-stage break-world. Chu Tianxing. Big brother! Chu Tianlang could not help but scream. The first cultivator to fly out of the dead soul fruit was Chu Tianlong's big brother. Back then, Chu Tianxing died in the sky ditch when he went out to train. However, back then, he was just an undying cultivator. Now, he was the burial god. However, Chu Tianxing could not hear Chu Tianlong's shout. He stood next to the dead soul tree, stunned. At that moment, he was a puppet that had been resurrected. He only listened to the Een soldier's orders. Hee. Welcome back, friend Chu. Let's build a world together. The Een soldier laughed eerily, weirdly, and arrogantly. Boom. Crack. Then, the dead soul fruit kept exploding. Every dead soul fruit was a break-world cultivator. Plus, those cultivators had died in the sky ditch on the ancient Shu land. They were from the Chu family, the Gu family, the Een family, and the other families of Xianmeng. They followed the growth of the dead soul tree and returned to the human world. That scene not only shocked Chu Tianlang, but also the cultivators of the Een family. The power of the Een family's grand ancestor Een soldier, who had returned from the sky ditch, was beyond their imagination. However, they couldn't help but feel a chill behind this powerful technique. In an instant, a dozen break-world cultivators broke out of the fruit, and the dead soul tree was still growing. The entire sky lake had broken the ice, but the lake water had turned blood-red. Gurgle, gurgle. It was even to the extent that the area of water closest to the death soul tree was suffused with blood-red bubbles. The lake water looked like it was about to boil. The important matter is over. The Chu family is gone. Chu Tianlang lamented in his heart. At that moment, he didn't even have the will to continue watching. At this moment, a huge wave suddenly appeared at the bottom of the lake. Hua, the waves were 100 zhang high, sweeping up the roots of the death soul tree. Those roots were like blood snakes that were wriggling in the blood-red water. They were ferocious and terrifying, causing one to shiver. The Een soldier raised an eyebrow. Looking again, the waters of the celestial lake opened, rumbling. An ancient bronze palace slowly rose from the bottom of the lake. An aura of vicissitudes of life rushed toward them. Ancient Chu Divine Palace. Chu Tianlang couldn't help but shed tears of blood when he saw this, because he knew what it meant for the Divine Hall to float on the celestial lake. That shrine was the last foundation of the Chu family. The reason why the Chu family was able to cultivate in the Tianhu Lake was all because of that shrine. As long as the Divine Hall existed, the Chu family would exist. If the Divine Hall was destroyed, the Chu family would perish. The Divine Hall was not built by the Chu family. However, it was discovered by the Chu family. Back then, the ancestors of the Chu family had made a great vow in front of the Divine Hall. They vowed to serve the Divine Hall for generations. Only then could they cultivate in the Divine Hall. Since then, the Chu family had gradually become a dominant force. Now, the Divine Hall had been reduced to this state by the Een soldier's death soul tree. It was obvious that there was nothing they could do to save the situation. Whoosh, whoosh, however, as soon as the dilapidated shrine appeared, 7 figures flew out from a corner of the space that was still relatively intact. Aside from Chu Tianlang, the Chu family had 4 break-world cultivators. The Chu family's current leader, Chu Wendao, the first elder, Chu Yusong, the second elder, Chu Wentian, and the strongest member of the younger generation, Chu Fan. 2 were in the middle stage of the break world, and 2 were in the early stage. Behind them were 3 soul burial cultivators. They were the elites of the Chu family. 1 was in the late stage, and 2 were in the middle stage. Chu Shan, who had been teleported out, had the lowest level. Because teleporting him required less power, it was guaranteed that he would be teleported to the Gu family. Chu Wendao looked like a middle-aged man. His eyes were red, and they looked like they were about to crack. Earlier, they had been trying to find a way to escape the lake, even if they had to die along with the Chu family. Unfortunately, the Death Soul Tree's sealing power was too strong. After sending Chu Tianlang out, they tried everything they could to break the ice. In the end, when the lake was broken, they used the Divine Hall to escape. Een family. The Chu family will not live under the same sky as you. Chu Wendao gritted his teeth. Whoosh. At this time, even though he was the leader of the family, Chu Wendao could not remain calm. Calmness could not solve any problems at this time. There was no other way. They all saw Chu Tianlang being frozen in space. At this moment, they did not even know that Chu Shan had been teleported out. Therefore, they could not escape, not because they wanted to save the Chu family, but because they wanted to die together with the enemy. Ha ha ha. The Een soldier kept laughing. At this moment, he did not need to use the Een family. He could use the dead soul warriors. Kill! The Een soldier waved his hand, and the dead soul warriors surrounded the Chu family's divine hall. Those dead souls had no souls. Their eyes were gray and white, looking sinister and terrifying. They were just puppets. They were just tools. Whoosh! Chu Tianxing was the first to run toward Chu Wendao. The broken world power swept everything. Seeing this, Chu Tianlang was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The Een soldier wanted the Chu family to bury the Chu family with their own hands. That was evil. It was a public outrage. But no one had the means or the ability to stop it. Kill him. It's not considered killing our ancestors, Chu Wendao said. At this moment, he showed the decisiveness of a family leader. Chu Yusong, who was next to him, went forward. Chu Tianxing was his uncle, and other than Chu Wendao, Chu Yusong was the only middle-stage broken world cultivator in the Chu family. Whoosh! There were tears in Chu Yusong's eyes, but he could not show mercy. If he did not kill Chu Tianxing would kill him. Chu Tianxing was now the Een soldier's lackey. Chu Yusong unsheathed a sky-splitting giant axe. It was a top-notch god weapon of the broken world level. A silver light came down from the sky, heading toward Chu Tianxing. But Chu Tianxing did not do anything to block it. His body did not slow down at all. Puff! Chu Yusong's giant axe cleaved Chu Tianxing in half. Half was red and the other half was black. That was the color of the dead soul fruit. But strangely, there was no blood on Chu Tianxing's body, and there was no spirit qi. The two halves formed a strange arc and actually merged together in an instant. Chu Yusong had never expected that things would turn out this way. She couldn't help but feel shocked. Chu Tianxing's gray eyes were wide open. He formed a claw with one hand and grabbed at Chu Yusong's chest. Chu Tianxing's realm was about the same as Chu Yusong's. Theoretically, it should not have killed him. However, Chu Tianxing's throat bobbed slightly. He actually let out a strange sound. Chu Yusong's expression changed abruptly when she heard that voice. It was the secret art of the Chu family, the soul curse. It was a secret art passed down in the Chu family. It was used to clean up the family and punish unfilial descendants. Only the elders of the Chu family could use it on their juniors. When the soul curse was used, the juniors' souls would tremble for a moment as punishment. But this soul curse was enough to take Chu Yusong's life. Puff! Chu Tianxing's claw pierced Chu Yusong's heart. Chapter 572. If his immortal heart was broken, he would die for sure. Chu Tianxing let out a low growl, and then his arms shook violently. Bang! Chu Yusong, a great cultivator in the mid-stage of the world-breaking realm, had his body shattered and turned into a mist of blood. Arg! Third uncle, patriarch. Chu Wentian and the others cried out in shock. Everything that had happened in the blink of an eye. Although everyone in the Chu family was prepared to die, the scene had been too shocking. It had been a one-sided fight. Because Chu Tianxing had killed Chu Yusong with a single move. Killing one's own kind was nothing more than that. A soul curse. Chu Wendao and the others hadn't expected Chu Tianxing to be able to use a secret art of the Chu family. This meant that none of the Chu family members present could fight against Chu Tianxing. Chu Tianxing was the highest-ranking elder in the Chu family. Every member of the Chu family would be affected by his soul curse, unless they were a level higher than him. But above the world-breaking realm was the Sea of Destruction. They didn't even dare think about it. That was a level they could only dream of. For the Chu family, Chu Tianxing was an undefeatable enemy. Gurgle, gurgle. Chu Tianxing's throat kept making strange noises. This time, he was heading straight for Chu Wendao. The Chu family's soul curse was no exception. The Yin soldier watched everything with a cold and eerie smile. The soul curse was unleashed. Chu Wendao's soul shook. He was in a trance. The other cultivators of the Chu family wanted to help him, but the soul curse's voice exploded in their ears. Boom, boom, it was like heavenly thunder, and their blood and souls were all imprisoned. It was the power of their bloodline. The Chu family couldn't resist it. Chu Tianlang was clear-headed, but he was just a sad spectator. Chu Tianxing was unconscious, like a walking corpse. He was just a tool to kill. In fact, he didn't even know he was killing his own clansmen. Because he was already a dead person. In an instant, the Chu family members were frozen in the air. At this moment, his sharp claws were already reaching for Chu Wendao. The two of them were only a few dozen feet away from each other. 4 break world cultivators, that kind of distance could be covered in the blink of an eye. Ha 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 ha. The eerie and arrogant laughter of the Yin soldier standing not far away was the background of everything. He enjoyed the thrill of being in control. All of the Yin family cultivators were waiting for the moment the Chu family was destroyed. In fact, as long as Chu Wendao died, the Chu family would basically be completely annihilated. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter, not to mention that the Chu family has almost been wiped out. Chu Wendao was completely restrained by Chu Tianxing's soul incantation. Chi-chi, chi-chi. Chu Tianqing's sharp claws were covered in reddish-black electric arcs as they went straight for Chu Wendao. In the void, Chu Tianlang closed his eyes. At that moment, he was willing to die together with Chu Wendao. The Chu family was finished. Even though Chu Tianlong's soul was sealed, it began to dissipate. This was because he had completely given up on the idea of living. With the destruction of the Chu family, every moment he lived was torture. Chu Tianlong's soul began to truly dissipate. The Yin soldier's seal could no longer seal his will to die. Of course, there was no point in sealing him. Most of the Yin family members wore a smile on their faces. Occasionally, there were some who were calm, but their brows were slightly furrowed. The fox grieves for the rabbit's death. The way the Chu family died made them feel a chill in their hearts. Could the returning patriarch really help the Yin family attain the top position in the ancient Shu? At this moment, they were all a little doubtful. The patriarch, who had been separated by several generations, seemed more like a demon. Chu Tianqing's sharp claws were less than 10 feet away from Chu Wendao's immortal heart. 9 feet, 8 feet, 7 feet, endless electric arcs had appeared in front of Chu Wendao. Even his clothes had begun to be torn apart. 5 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, Chu Wendao's heart had already begun to bleed. The power to break the world. Chu Tianqing's sharp claws did not even need to scratch his flesh to shatter his immortal heart. Life and death were hanging by a thread. All of a sudden, a ray of green light appeared out of thin air. Pfft! The ray of light seemed to pierce through time and space, breaking through the void and hitting Chu Tianqing between the brows. Chu Tianqing did not even make a move to dodge. Whoosh! All the cultivators present were in an uproar. The Yin soldier's body trembled violently. Because that was impossible. Who could have broken through his barrier? Why didn't Chu Tianqing have a clone? Who on the ancient Shu continent had that kind of power? Then, the formation in the void fluctuated again. A cultivator in black took a step forward like a deity. Almost no one could see his movements clearly. Bang! The cultivator in black flipped his wrist and the ray of green light penetrated Chu Tianqing's head. Then, with a loud bang, Chu Tianqing's head exploded. Red and black light filled the sky. However, the red and black light seemed to be trying to reform again. At this moment, a ray of white light flew out from the cultivator in black. Humph! The white light was in the shape of a little white pig. The little white pig raised its nose. Hiss, hiss! The red and black soul energy was absorbed by the little white pig. The little white pig's eyes lit up with satisfaction. Dracophant Soul Eater? The Yin soldier's expression changed drastically. The little white pig was staring at the dead soul cultivators around it. More importantly, it was drooling when it saw the tree of the dead souls. It would not eat anything that was not the essence. It would not grow unless it was an evil soul. The tree of the dead souls was a delicacy to the little white pig. The fruits were even more delicious than the elixirs and fruits that Sumo usually gave it. Humph! That tree, those fruits, and those people are all yours. Sumo held the broken bamboo pole in her hand and stared coldly at the Yin soldier. Humph! Humph! The little white pig bared its fangs at its master's words and spread its silver wings. The little white pig immediately went into battle mode. Everything had its weakness. The aura of the dead souls was like spiritual energy to the little white pig. Chu Tianqing's death woke the members of the Chu family up. At the same time, more than 30 cultivators above the god-burying realm flew out of the formation. They were Chu Yunnan, Gan Tianqing, and Yu Wuji, who had come as fast as they could. Among them, Gan Tianqing was in the late stage of the world-breaking realm, and Yu Wuji had a green light flickering between his eyebrows. Their battle prowess was on par with the Yin divine soldiers. There was also Sumo, who was facing the Yin soldier. Wendao. Chu Yunnan went to Chu Wendao's side. He scanned the area with his divine sense, and his expression turned gloomy. The Chu family's situation was worse than he had expected. Apart from the cultivators in front of him, almost everyone in the Chu family had perished. Second uncle. Chu Wendao's voice was deep. He did not expect Chu Yunnan to come back at this time. The cultivators from the Gu family and Xianmeng will be here soon. We'll come back first to deal with the emergency, Chu Yunnan said. Chu Wendao and the others breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Chu Yunnan's words. Although the situation was not optimistic, the reinforcements were like a shot in the arm. They were going to fight to the death anyway. What was there to be afraid of? None of you need to do anything today. However, none of the Yin family members will be able to leave. Sumo's eyes were as dark as ink, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. His voice was calm, but it was extremely cold. His black robe fluttered even though there was no wind. At that moment, Sumo exuded an endless murderous aura. That was because Sumo saw the mountains of corpses and blood on the north and south mountain of the soul-gazing mountain. Since the three south mountains were at war, and the Yin family had accumulated so much blood, there was no point in keeping them alive. Chapter 573. None of the Yin family members could escape. When Su Mo finished speaking, the entire Tianhu Lake, as well as the gazing lake and mountain range, fell into a momentary silence. Although it was only for a moment, Sumo's words shocked everyone. In fact, aside from Yu Wuji and Gan Tianqing, no one believed that Sumo had the power to do that. There were a dozen break world-class dead soul cultivators, and the Yin family cultivators had more than 2,000 people. There were 5 break world cultivators and 20 burial god. The Yin soldier had completed the break world. The power of the Yin family was not something that Sumo, who was in the late stage of the break world, could resist. But Sumo's power was very strong. It was not something that could be done with courage. Sumo's body indeed possessed unfathomable power. Ha ha ha! Ha ha! At this time, the Yin soldier came back to his senses. He looked up to the sky and laughed. Who are you? You don't know how high the sky is? Ha ha! Sumo looked at the Yin soldier and did not say anything. His demonic eyes emitted an endless black light. At the same time, Sumo patted his bag of holding. Whoosh! Whoosh! Looking again, a tattered cloth bag flew out from the storage bag. It was a treasure that Sumo had not used in a long time. Because she did not usually use it, the broken bag could store the universe. At least, Sumo had not encountered anything that it could not store. Set up the formation, Sumo coldly shouted. Looking inside the sack, 18 rays of light flew out. Among them, there were 3 purple lights, and the rest had a golden light. They were the 18 skeletons that Sumo had. The 3 purple lights were King Mu, the Life and Death Man, and the Peach Heaven Puppet. After they flew out, they each took a position and followed the shape of the 9 palaces. 2 9 palaces formations were stacked together. King Mu's puppet was the eye of the 2 overlapping 9 palaces formations. The Life and Death Man and the Peach Heaven each guarded a 9 palaces formation. It was a very strange arrangement. Within the barrier, there would be new barriers. Within the grand formation, there would be another grand formation. Sumo's formation was completely intertwined with the barrier formation deployed by the Yin soldier. At this moment, it was unclear who had trapped whom. A dead soul dares to be so arrogant? Sumo glanced at the Yin soldier and sneered. You'll have to swallow that tree first. At the same time, the skeleton of the adult Dracophant soul-eater beast flew out from Sumo's ragged bag. The little white pig was extremely excited. With a low growl, it jumped into the skull of the skeleton. Roar, roar! As the little white pig landed, the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast roared at the sky, shaking the barrier. The expressions of all the cultivators present changed. No one knew the upper limit of the legendary 3 great mythological beasts of the Pure Land. The skeleton, which was hundreds of feet tall, was covered in a layer of white mist. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast seemed to have come to life, its aura extremely terrifying. At this moment, the ones who were the most afraid were not the normal cultivators of the Een family, but the dead soul cultivators from the Tree of Dead Souls. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was their nemesis. Its roar was enough to make them feel uneasy. It was almost the same as when Chu Tianxing used the curse on the Chu family. None of the dead soul cultivators dared to step forward. In the eyes of the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast, they were all prey. However, the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast did not care about them at all. Roar! The little white pig inside the skull looked ferocious, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Every single one of its movements would be completely copied by the adult skeleton. It opened its giant mouth and charged at the Tree of Dead Souls. Although the Tree of Dead Souls was lush with leaves, it was no more than 7 feet tall. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast swallowed its trunk in one gulp. Then, the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast roared again and spread its bony wings, soaring into the sky. Whoosh! Originally, the roots of the Tree of Dead Souls were deeply rooted in the lake. However, the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast seemed to have the power to uproot a mountain, directly uprooting it. The waves of the lake surged like a tide. The trunk was 7 feet long, and the roots were 100 feet long. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast emitted endless white light, and the blood-red roots of the Tree of Dead Souls were rapidly withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. All the power of dead souls was absorbed by the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast. Many meridians on the body of the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast seemed to be regenerating. The scene left all the cultivators at the scene with their mouths agape. The Tree of Dead Souls that had just displayed its divine might and almost dried up the lake actually became a meal for the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast, just like that? Humph! Rumble! The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast chewed. The Tree of Dead Souls was like grass in its mouth. The sound of chewing was like thunder. As for the little white pig, it was happily humming in the skull because it was simply too delicious. At the same time, the little white pig's body began to grow bigger. Crack! The bones on its body began to crack. Countless blood marks began to appear on the little white pig's body, as if its body was about to burst open. Soon, the little white pig's body surpassed the skull. However, the little white pig did not seem to care. It seemed to be fusing with the corpse. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast chewed non-stop. The sap of the Tree of Dead Souls was also reddish-black, flowing down the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast's mouth. That little white pig had really swallowed the Tree of Dead Souls. All these changes were extremely terrifying. The seal that covered the entire territory of the Chu family was dissipating bit by bit. This was because the seal that the Een soldier set up was based on the Tree of Dead Souls. Now that the foundation was gone, how could it still exist? At this moment, the Een soldier's expression completely changed. One of the things he relied on to return to the ancient Shu was that half of the Tree of Dead Souls. The Tree of Dead Souls could summon many dead soul cultivators. Then, with the help of those dead soul cultivators, he could totally unify the ancient Shu. Before Sumo appeared, everything was going according to his plan, and it was going very smoothly. However, the appearance of Sumo made everything go up in smoke. "Who are you?" The Een soldier stared at Sumo fiercely. It seemed that only at this moment, Sumo was qualified to tell him her name. "Who am I?" "There's no need for you to know." Sumo sneered coldly. Then, Sumo also made her move. The others might not know Sumo, but the 3 Een family swordsmen certainly knew her. However, when Sumo appeared, they were shocked. In 200 years, she had increased 2 levels in the breaking realm. They did not dare to imagine it. What was more terrifying was the power that Sumo displayed, which was far beyond the later stage of the breaking realm. Unfortunately, they did not have time to tell the Een soldier. Sumo's figure was like a ghost. The broken bamboo stick in her hand emitted a green light, and she stabbed at the Een soldier. Theoretically, Sumo was one level lower than the Een soldier. However, at this moment it seemed that Sumo was one level higher than him. Kill! However, the Een soldier was not afraid. He flipped his hand, and a strange-looking walking stick appeared in his hand. The walking stick was about 5 feet long, brown in color, and there was a skull carved on the head. That should be a rare treasure. The Een soldier held the walking stick in his hand, feeling very confident. Therefore, he did not dodge Sumo's bamboo stick. Instead, he pushed the head of the walking stick forward. The bamboo stick against the walking stick, the later stage against the perfected stage. In fact, the Een soldier's response was not a problem. Theoretically, he had a good chance of winning. However, he had underestimated the power of Sumo and the power of the broken bamboo stick. Boom, crack, when the two divine weapons collided, the Een soldier instantly felt the grip on his hand loosen. His walking stick had been broken into 2 pieces, and Sumo's body once again fiercely advanced. She wanted to kill the Een soldier. Chapter 574. No one had expected Sumo to destroy the Een soldier's weapon in one move. What kind of weapon was that bamboo pole? Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji looked at each other. Even they had never seen such a weapon in the 3 realms. It was not something from the 3 realms galaxy. Ah! Yin Shenbing also cried out in alarm. However, it was impossible for him to hide from Sumo's bamboo pole. Puff! A green light flashed, and the broken bamboo pole pierced through the Een soldier's heart. Wow! The cultivators of the Een family were all shocked. In their eyes, the ancestral patriarch, who was invincible in the ancient Shu, was killed by Sumo in one move? The cultivators of the Chu family, the Gu family, and the Xianmeng family were also shocked. Once the heart was broken, death was certain. However, after the Een soldier screamed, a strange smile appeared on his face. Everything happened in an instant. The broken bamboo pole had pierced through his heart. However, it only pierced through his body, and did not cause too much substantial damage to him. He had no heart to begin with. In fact, the moment the bamboo pole pierced through him, Sumo felt something strange. The Een soldier's body was very strong. If it were not for the broken bamboo pole, ordinary world-breaking treasures would not have been able to hurt him. However, Sumo could feel it. After the bamboo pole pierced through Sumo's skin, the Een soldier's body seemed to be empty. There was no dispersal of spiritual energy, no shattering of immortal hearts, and no spurting of blood. A puppet! Sumo's heart jumped. However, the thought only lasted for a moment. The Een soldier was already in front of Sumo, following the bamboo pole. At the same time, the Een soldier raised one hand and cast a spell. The power of a world-breaking cultivator was not to be underestimated. In an instant, Sumo felt a black, murderous aura in front of him. At the same time, the black evil aura carried a fishy smell. Sumo raised her eyebrows. That was no ordinary spell. However, there was no way for him to dodge at this distance. In an instant, Sumo sealed her 5 senses to prevent any poison. At the same time, with a thought, the ancient secular fan flew out. A red light blocked in front of him. Boom, crack, in a split second. Even with the red dust fan, the Een soldier's break world power, which had a special power, still dealt Sumo a lot of damage. 2 of the ribs of the red dust fan had been directly broken. This was a situation that Sumo had never encountered before. At the same time, Sumo felt her Dan sea churning, stirring up 1,000-foot waves. The 9 dragons' heaven platform shook slightly. The azure figure that had been sitting on the immortal platform also trembled slightly. Wow! Sumo retreated hastily and spat out a mouthful of blood. Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji raised their eyebrows. Although Sumo had destroyed the Een soldier's Dharma treasure and pierced through his flesh. However, the Een soldier's injury did not seem to be serious. After he succeeded in his attack, he did not attack again. Instead, he retreated. The wound on his flesh was healing at an extremely fast speed. In this round, Sumo had lost by one move. Sumo wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, then looked up at the Een soldier and said coldly, "You're no longer a real cultivator? Whose puppet are you?" The Een soldier laughed eerily. His wound had completely healed. In all the realms, who isn't a puppet? So what if I'm a puppet and let me be reborn and fulfill my wish? Hearing his words, Sumo frowned. From the sound of it, the Een soldier's words did not seem to be wrong. If you give your soul to someone else, you might as well die for real. Sumo looked at the Een soldier and shook her head. You're from the corpse-less sect, right? I'm me. The Een soldier denied. The grayish-white color in his eyes intensified. I use all my strength for my wish. So, I'm not a puppet. I'm not from the corpse-less sect. The Een family will unify the ancient Shu. Ha ha ha. I'll kill anyone who stands in my way. Following the Een soldier's maniacal laughter, his robe began to flutter, his long hair began to flutter, and his aura began to change. Crack, crack, crack. Strange sounds could be heard from the Een soldier's body. It was similar to the little white pig's evolution. Under the Een soldier's black robe, he seemed to be transforming into a new body. Sumo did not move. She narrowed her eyes as she observed the scene. Sins committed by heaven can be forgiven, but sins committed by oneself cannot be forgiven, Sumo said calmly, and did not say anything else. However, he kept the broken bamboo pole. At the same time, he conjured a seal with both hands. It was an ancient spell from the three realms. Gon Tianqing and Yu Wuji, who were watching the battle from afar, frowned again. That was because they seemed to have seen the spell before, but it felt unfamiliar. And when he looked again, 7 black roses had appeared around Sumo at some point. They were not real roses, but a special kind of crystal. They came from the three realms after the shattered world. Their entire bodies were black, and they glowed with an inky light. The vicissitudes of the three realms surged towards them. At that moment, other than Yu Wuji and Gon Tianqing, the rest of the ancient Shu cultivators felt their souls tighten. That was because they were not used to the aura. Yizong was a different world to the three realms. Similarly, the three realms were also different worlds to Yizong. That was why the feeling was similar. Sumo took out the demonic flowers of the three realms. That kind of aura was enough to make the cultivators of Yizong afraid. It was like a virus. The cultivators of Yizong were not immune to it at all. However, at that moment, Sumo focused all of his power on the Een family. Otherwise, the Gu family, the Chu family, and the cultivators of Xianmeng would all be in trouble. Flowers bloom, fairies fall, Sumo shouted. At the same time, the aura on his body suddenly dispersed. It was an indiscriminate attack spell. It was not only aimed at the Een soldier, but it also attacked all the members of the Een family. Late stage of the breaking world. However, the power that Sumo released was far beyond the late stage of the breaking world. With him as the center, the 7 black roses abruptly formed a formation. Whoosh, countless black rose petals appeared in an instant. At the same time, a black boat appeared under Sumo's feet. Sumo stood on the boat like a god or a demon. That scene made the expressions of Gon Tianqing and Yu Wuji change. Demon. That was the true demon of the three realms. That demon was different from the demon lord, Xiao Luo Amu, and the others in the past. For the three realms, that demon represented the true power of destruction. At that moment, Sumo seemed to be that demon. However, Gon Tianqing and Yu Wuji both knew that when the galaxy was destroyed, the Devil's Flower did everything it could to stop the power of the other world. In front of outsiders, the Devil's Flower was also the guardian of the galaxy. Gon Tianqing and Yu Wuji were just shocked that Sumo could control the power of the former devil. Moreover, that boat was clearly the devil's boat from back then. Whoosh, the boat swayed gently, and the roses were like the sea. Sumo's expression became even colder. All the members of the Een family would be drowned by the black roses. At that moment, Sumo even felt that she was taking revenge for the Three Realms galaxy. Chapter 575. The spiritual energy was like an ocean and the demonic flowers were like a tidal wave. The barrier set up by the Een soldier was completely destroyed by Sumo's power. The entire Chu family's core area was filled with the power of the demonic flowers. To avenge the Three Realms, to fight for the galaxy. That feeling made Sumo's heart turn cold. Sumo's eyes had turned from pitch black to blood red. However, his power did not diminish as the spell was unleashed. Instead, it was increasing. Set up the formation. Gon Tianqing and Yu Wuji yelled at the same time. Whoosh! The cultivators of the Gu family, Chu family, and Xianmeng immediately set up their defenses and formed a formation net. Otherwise, they were afraid that Sumo's power would crush them at the same time. The Een soldier's expression changed drastically. Sumo's power was unstoppable. The moment the boat under Sumo's feet appeared, the canoe that he had used to return from the ravine also appeared under his feet. The canoe was comparable to a lotus platform. However, the canoe was instantly swallowed by the black rose petals. Whoosh, whoosh! The Een soldier did not expect the canoe under his feet to be eroded in an instant. Meanwhile, the Dracophant Soul Eater had completely devoured the Tree of Dead Souls. The skeleton of the Dracophant Soul Eater was nowhere to be seen. Above the heavenly lake stood a real Dracophant Soul Eater. Its body glowed with white light and its wings were more than 10 meters long. Its fangs were like pillars and its tail was like a dragon's. In this battle, the little white pig had completed his adult evolution. The lake had dried up. The heavenly lake that once spanned 800 miles was now less than 300 miles. Moreover, it was no longer the calm lake it once was. It had turned into a blood-red swamp. The power of the heavenly lake had helped the little white pig achieve his goal. The Dracophant Soul Eater seemed to have sensed its master's intention. The Dead Souls cultivators were devoured one by one. They could not resist at all. Its master was arrogant, but it was even more arrogant. As one of the 3 divine beasts of the Pure Land, it was like an evil beast from the ancient times. Roar! The roar of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast could be said to resound through the clouds. The entire continent of the ancient Shu was shaken. The Xianmeng immortal family closest to South Shu was on the way. Before they even arrived, they could already feel that unparalleled battle intent. Many grand cultivators in Xianmeng were shocked. They had never seen such a battle before in their memories. Kill! On the demonic arc, Sumo only let out a single sound. At the same time, he dashed toward the Een soldier. He rode on a demonic boat and carried a demonic flower with him. Sumo reached out with one hand and rolled up countless black roses to attack the Een soldier. At that moment, the Een soldier was on the brink of despair. The black roses were like thousands of flying ants and black locusts, covering the sky and covering the earth. The Een soldier's black robe melted in an instant. However, beneath the black robe was not a real body. Instead, it was an empty skeleton. However, the skeleton was nailed with 7 shiny silver nails. Other than the Een soldier's head and limbs which were wrapped in skin and flesh, there was not a single trace of flesh on his body. It was not a living person at all. On closer inspection, there were strange runes on each of the nails. Just now, Sumo was right. The Een soldier was a puppet. However, he was an extremely high-level puppet. He had a consciousness of his own. 7 soul-suppressing nails. However, there were very few cultivators in the ancient Shu who knew how to control puppets like this. God, save me! The Een soldier was still resisting stubbornly. At the same time, he screamed at the sky. The first part of the black roses that was flying toward him was instantly reduced to dust. However, the Een soldier was soon drowned by them. At that moment, a door of light suddenly appeared out of thin air. From the door, a skeletal arm reached out and grabbed the Een soldier's head. The skeletal arm seemed to be trying to take him away. However, the black roses were like maggots in a tarsal bone, entangling him. Sumo raised his eyebrows. "Withdraw!" he shouted. When he looked again, the tattered sack in the air had opened up. Whoosh! The endless suction force was like a divine dragon swallowing the sea. In an instant, a black hole was formed in the sky above the lake. There was a huge black whirlpool at the mouth of the hole. "Ah!" the Een soldier screamed in agony. Crack! The suction force forcefully pulled out the 7 soul-suppressing nails from his body. His torso instantly fell apart. At the same time, the skeletal arm that was grabbing his head buzzed. The door of light that appeared out of thin air was also vibrating. Both sides were locked in a stalemate in the air. "Go!" Sumo had an idea. The tattered bamboo pole suddenly flew out, with a tail of light that was more than 10 feet long, and stabbed at the skeletal arm. At that moment, no one knew where the arm came from. Boom! In the air, the light scattered, and the sound was like thunder. Sumo's move had completely broken the stalemate. "God, you've wronged me!" The Een soldier's last words were filled with unwillingness. Because God's judgment did not appear. God could not save him either. Whoosh, whoosh, the Een soldier's head turned into dust. The skeletal arm also collapsed in an instant. However, the tattered bamboo pole could not penetrate the door of light. The door of light instantly closed. It was as if it had never appeared, and there was no trace of it left. The Een soldier was completely destroyed, dead. At that moment, all the cultivators of the Een family were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The 4 break-world cultivators of the Een family had already been consumed by the black roses. The 3 guests of the Een family and the other cultivators of the Een world could not withstand a single blow. Almost 3,000 cultivators were killed by Sumo in less than 2 hours. The entire core area of the Chu family was filled with brown roses. Sumo showed no mercy, and there was no need for her to show mercy. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Otherwise, who would summon the souls of the Chu family? That scene was clearly seen by all the powerful cultivators on the ancient Shu. The cultivators of the immortal family of Xianmeng had arrived. However, they were only the last witnesses, because Sumo didn't need their help at all. Once they joined the battle, they needed to protect themselves. In this battle, Sumo shocked everyone in the ancient Shu. She had almost completely swept away all the obstacles to unify the ancient Shu. Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji knew the meaning of this. However, it was not over yet. At that moment, all the black roses began to retreat after the slaughter, like a receding tide. They all ran toward Sumo's boat. Whoosh, whoosh, in the air there was the sound of waves. Between heaven and earth, the black tide shook the sky and the earth. And Sumo was sitting cross-legged on the black boat. The boat bobbed up and down on the sea of black roses. The power in Sumo's body did not stop. Instead, it was still increasing. Leveling up? Gan Tianqing's expression changed again. He was the first to see the problem. At that moment, the power around Sumo began to pour into his Dan Sea like an ancient flood. All rivers returned to the sea, unstoppable. Chapter 576. All rivers flowed into the sea. The demon flowers returned. Sumo sat cross-legged on the demon boat. She looked serious and her eyes were slightly closed. Wow! The waves of the demon flowers were higher than the one before. They rose layer by layer and piled up. The demon boat had been pushed up 100 feet. Then, they dissolved layer by layer. All of their power was poured into Sumo's Dantian Sea. Roar! A loud sound echoed in the sky. It seemed to be the sad sigh of an old man. All the cultivators around, and even all the cultivators on the ancient Shu continent, quietly watched the scene. Sumo's entire body exuded endless black splendor. The entire sky appeared to be a black hole. Late stage of the breaking world. great completion of the breaking world. At this time, Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji's expressions changed because of shock. Sumo's cultivation method didn't make sense at all. Even though they were also reincarnators, they couldn't catch up to that kind of cultivation. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Gods only existed in the legends of the ancient Shu continent. However, Sumo was wearing a black robe and standing in front of them. Sumo didn't move even though the black waves rolled and disappeared. She looked down on the world with the power of a king. Whoosh, whoosh, that was Sumo's moment. No one dared to move forward. The reason for that was because the power it emitted was enough to shatter everything. Who dared to stop such cultivation? Besides, Sumo's advancement didn't stop. Everything was still going on. Above the ancient Shu continent in the sky, Miao Long-er and Guan Xiong stood side by side on the city wall. There was a water mirror in front of them. Everything about Sumo was reflected in the water mirror. Little fatty, you can leave the city to see Sumo. Miao Long-er sighed. That guy's cultivation speed is unbelievable. Even though he is a reincarnated underworld lord, it is still beyond our imagination. I have cultivated for tens of thousands of years to reach the sea destruction realm. But now, he has completed the breaking world. Hee. Guan Xiong's face was full of smiles. He seemed to be proud of Sumo's promotion. Miss, little Su will soon surpass you, right? Miao Long-er couldn't help but turn to look at Guan Xiong when he heard this, and he said coldly, "So what if you've surpassed me? Don't tell me you want him to help you beat me up?" Guan Xiong immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing and hurriedly waved his hand. "How could I? Young miss, I don't have that thought. Besides, we're on the same side. Who is Sumo?" Cough, cough. Miao Long-er's eyes were filled with hostility. How could she not hear Guan Xiong's insincerity? "Little fatty, I think you're really tired of staying in the city." "Huh? No. I'm willing to accompany eldest Miss day and night, always at your beck and call, never leaving her side." If Guan Xiong said these words when Miao Long-er was in a good mood, Miao Long-er would most likely glare at him with her beautiful eyes, and then spit on him. Finally, her cheeks would flush red, and she would feel extremely satisfied. But today, Guan Xiong's foreshadowing was not enough, making him appear too hypocritical. How could Miao Long-er forgive him? Instantly, her face turned even colder. "Eldest miss, I'm sorry," Guan Xiong shouted when he saw that the situation was not looking good. However, Miao Long-er had already lifted him to the top of the city wall. "Go find Sumo," Miao Long-er grunted. Whoosh, poor Guan Xiong was thrown off the top of the city wall by Miao Long-er like a ball. "Eldest miss," Guan Xiong's shout reverberated in the void for tens of thousands of zhang. Miao Long-er snorted when she heard it, and then she pursed her lips into a smile. Guan Xiong was a man who could not stay put. He had been staying with her in the northern Chill City all these years, which was actually not bad. Besides, this guy really needed more training. Master hadn't come back yet. The future of the northern Chill City was still unknown. Miao Long-er looked down at the city wall and could not see Guan Xiong's shadow. But she knew that he must be fine. Meanwhile, Guan Xiong, who was floating in the sky, was still cursing in his mind. "Eldest miss is good at everything, but she is temperamental." In fact, Guan Xiong did not know that women were temperamental. The key was who she was with. Guan Xiong soared between the sky and the earth like a flying penguin. Somewhere else in the sky. That was the center of the Pure Land. A young girl dressed like a maid was standing in the clouds. A 5-colored skeleton stood next to her, but the skeleton had lost an arm. The girl was none other than Qi Wuhui's personal maid, Xiao Yu. The maid's face was slightly cold and her brows were tightly knitted together. That was because she had failed to save Yin Shinbing just now. After all, the Yin soldier was a relatively important chess piece. Sumo's battle prowess was beyond her imagination. Damn it! A murderous glint flashed in Xiao Yu's eyes. At the same time, the water mirror in front of her showed the scene of Sumo's breakthrough. Xiao Yu frowned and pondered for a while. She was weighing how to deal with it. Then, she frowned and formed a seal with her hands. Whoosh! A door of light suddenly appeared in front of her. Then, with a flick of her hand, a 3-inch doll was sent into the light door. Be careful, Sumo. Xiao Yu's lips curled up. I'll give you a sea destroyer puppet. The Chu family, Tianhu. Everything about Sumo was still going on. Countless demonic flowers were gathered under the demonic boat, and how much spiritual power those demonic flowers carried. The power of nearly 3,000 Yin family cultivators was probably in there. Sumo's level seemed to be increasing. However, the great completion of the breaking realm was a huge bottleneck. At that moment, Sumo seemed to be breaking through to the Sea Destroyer realm. Sea Destroyer realm. Gan Tianqing and Yuwuji could not help but look at each other. Theoretically, they were cultivators that should not exist in the Pure Land. Now, there were no break world cultivators in the Pure Land world. None of them were born and raised in the Pure Land. Of course, Sumo was not one of them. However, Sumo was going to break through to the Sea Destroyer realm in the ancient Shu continent in front of many ancient Shu cultivators, which was really shocking. Gan Tianqing and Yuwuji became extremely vigilant. Gan Tianqing's body was already emitting the brilliance of 9 dragons, and the green light between Yuwuji's eyebrows was faintly pulsing. The dragon elephant soul-eating beast was growling and standing not far from Sumo. After all, in almost all of Sumo's previous breakthroughs and recovery of memories, it had been his protector. The cultivators of the Gu family, the Chu family, and Xianmeng all consciously spread out and protected Sumo in the middle. They all knew what it meant at this moment. Sumo had reached the most critical moment of advancement. Once something went wrong, the consequences would be very serious. However, at that moment, in the void above Sumo's head, a door of light suddenly appeared. The dazzling brilliance was like the eruption of a blazing sun. In the blazing sun, a female cultivator in white held a long sword and went straight to Sumo. Chapter 577. She was dressed in white and wielding a sword. The female cultivator looked like a fairy. Roar! The dragon elephant soul eater was the first to roar and charge forward. Its huge body was like a small mountain as it stood between Sumo and the female cultivator in white. Then, the big guy opened its mouth. Whoosh! A white flame went straight for the female cultivator. Now that the dragon elephant soul eater had completed its adult evolution, it was invincible below the sea annihilation realm. The flames it breathed could instantly kill a realm-breaking cultivator. However, in front of the white-robed female cultivator, the flames that could burn through worlds were actually ineffective. The female cultivator did not put up any defense against the flames. Whoosh, however, the flames of the dragon elephant soul eater parted like water in front of it. All the flames retreated 3 feet, unable to hurt the female cultivator at all. The female cultivator raised her sword and charged at the dragon elephant soul eater. Roar! The dragon elephant soul eater did not expect the female cultivator to be so powerful. It spread its wings to meet the sword ray. The dragon elephant soul eater's body was a treasure. Its wings were comparable to a sea annihilation divine weapon. Whoosh, boom! The sword ray and the wings collided. In an instant, a powerful force swept out and starlight shot into the sky. This time, the two sides were evenly matched. However, the female cultivator's movement technique was clearly more agile. The sword ray was blocked. She suddenly turned around and went under the dragon elephant soul eater's ribs. If the dragon elephant soul eater wanted to turn around, its speed was slightly slower. Whoosh! The sword ray broke through the obstruction. The female cultivator in white did not slow down at all. Moreover, the aura seemed to be stronger. However, someone behind the dragon elephant soul eater was blocking her. Gan Tianqing waved his hand. A dragon shadow entangled the body of the female cultivator in white. Huh! The female cultivator in white suddenly turned her head. At that moment Gan Tianqing was shocked. Because at that moment, he saw that the female cultivator did not have a face. Under the long hair was a bald face. It looked so strange. A puppet? Gan Tianqing immediately understood. This female puppet cultivator should be on the same side as Yin soldier. At the same time, he suddenly felt his body sink. Bang! When he looked again, the dragon shadow that he used to entangle the female cultivator was directly dissipated by the spiritual power of the female cultivator. No matter what, Gan Tianqing was just a break-world late stage. He was no longer the eternal realm of the three realms, and that white-robed female cultivator completely suppressed Gan Tianqing in terms of realm. After breaking Gan Tianqing's technique, the female cultivator didn't bother him anymore. Instead, she ran towards Sumo. Her target was Sumo. That was her master's order. As long as she didn't die, she would carry it out to the end. At this moment, only Yu Wuji was left above Sumo's head. The other ancient Shu cultivators were not as fast as Yu Wuji, even if they broke the world. At this moment, Yu Wuji had no other choice but to use the green light between her brows. Because her other magic arts, affected by her realm, were probably not as powerful as Gan Tianqing's attack just now. When the green light appeared, it was the power of the eternal realm. In an instant, all the power in the entire space was suppressed by the green light. That green light was a protective item that Qing Mozi had left for Yu Qiumu, and it wasn't a consumable. However, every time Yu Wuji used it, it consumed a lot of her energy. What was that? At this time, the cultivators in Xianmeng were shocked by Yu Wuji's green light. This was because Yu Wuji had never used such a technique before. The green light broke through the air. It was invincible. The few ancient Shu break world cultivators were all thinking that they could not block an attack like that. In other words, if Yu Wuji wanted to, he could kill them with one move. That kind of fighting power was terrifying. In the entire ancient Shu continent, no one could defeat Yu Wuji? The cultivators in Xianmeng felt a bit scared. Fortunately, Yu Wuji was their leader. Crack! The female cultivator's celestial sword collided with the green light. Without any suspense, the celestial sword that could resist the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was broken by Yu Wuji's green light. Huh! The female cultivator never thought that she would encounter such a strong opponent. The celestial sword in her hand was a Sea Destroyer-level divine weapon, and she couldn't dodge that green light at all. Boom-crack! The green light swept past and directly destroyed half of the female cultivator's body. However, she was a puppet, and a specially made puppet at that. Half of her body turned to dust, but it didn't stop her from rushing toward Sumo. In the void, the white dress fluttered like a butterfly. She had no face and could speak, but it was impossible to see whether she was happy or angry. Half of her body was like the Yin soldier who was hit by Sumo's broken bamboo pole. There was not a trace of blood, and there was not a trace of spirit qi. Crack chi, or the remaining half of the female cultivator's body reached out with one hand. Her arm flew away from her body, and became a white light that went toward Sumo's head. At this time, Sumo was completely meditating. She didn't know what was happening outside. At this time, if Sumo was hit, everything would be for naught. Whoosh, a whoosh, a whoosh, a whoosh. The Chu family and Xianmeng's world destroyers flew up at the same time, wanting to save Sumo. However, the power of the Sea of Annihilation in the void and the pressure from the green light just now had already slowed their movements to a crawl. Bang, bang! When they got close, they were blown away by the Sea Destroyer level aura. The battle at this time was beyond the World Destroyer level. The arm was only 7 feet away from Sumo. And at this moment, the black rose beneath the demonic arc suddenly rippled. Whoosh, whoosh, like a big wave, it rushed toward Sumo's head. Boom! The arm directly hit the black roses. In an instant, the black fog dispersed, like a thick cloud exploding. The power of the arm suddenly dispersed, and it was sealed by the demon flowers that surged up like a tide. It could not move. Whoosh! At this time, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't expect that the leveled-up sumo still had the power to protect herself. However, they had yet to completely exhale. Break! A soft shout came from the white-robed female cultivator's body. Boom! Crack! That arm actually exploded. How could the power of the sea destroyer be ordinary? The sea of flowers above Sumo's head exploded, and a big hole with a diameter of 30 to 40 feet appeared. Everything happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. The wave of demon flowers didn't even have time to repair everything. The whole process didn't even take a breath. Whoosh! Half of the female cultivator's body was already flying toward the black hole. At this moment, she was like a rapidly falling meteor. 3 feet away, no one could stop her. Gan Tianqing, Yuwuji, the ancient Shu cultivator, and the dragon-elephant soul-eating beast were all shocked. At this moment, there was only despair. Because everything happened too fast. The female cultivator in white was like a killer who would not stop until she was dead. At this moment, a gray-clothed figure appeared out of thin air above Sumo's head. Evil creature! The gray-clothed cultivator shouted and swung his long sleeve. The female cultivator's body was rolled into his long sleeves, and his figure did not slow down at all. One step. The gray-clothed cultivator stepped into the light door where the female cultivator in white had appeared. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 578. At the end of the road there was a twist. Just when everyone thought they couldn't stop the white-robed female cultivator, the situation changed. Unfortunately, no one could see the gray-robed man's face clearly. The gray-robed man only left a shadow and the word, evil creature. The moment he stepped into the light door, it disappeared. Gone without a trace. The crisis was over, but everyone stood in place in a daze. They seemed to be in a daze for a moment. Everything happened too fast. Only Sumo was still sitting on the demonic ark, as steady as a mountain. The black roses on the demonic ark were bobbing up and down. However, their numbers had decreased a lot. Sumo's cultivation seemed to be about to break through. In the void of the ancient Shu, Xiaoyu could still see everything in the water mirror. Just now there was a slight sneer on her lips, because even though the white-robed puppet was damaged, or even basically scrapped, the people of the ancient Shu could not stop her from destroying Sumo's advancement. However, the situation suddenly changed. The moment the gray-robed man appeared, Xiaoyu's expression suddenly changed. She turned around, about to turn into a ray of light and leave. However, she was still too slow. Whoosh! The light door in front of her opened, and the gray-robed man appeared in front of her. The gray robe had a very special style. Although it was also wearing a hood, the sleeves and the corners of the robe were embroidered with auspicious clouds. The entire robe had dark patterns. The pattern of the dark patterns was a vast starry sky. The gray-robed cultivator was thin and somewhat tall. He just stood there like that. However, at that moment it was as if the entire starry sky was his. The aura emitted from his body was too powerful. Looking again, the gray-robed man flicked his sleeve, and half of the white-robed female cultivator's body was directly thrown out. However, there was no white dress, only half of a person's body was charred. First Prince. This servant knows her mistake. Xiaoyu's face instantly paled, and she directly knelt in the void. Slap, slap. Bushinkong's thoughts moved, but his hands did not move. However, Xiaoyu's head moved left and right. A handprint instantly appeared on her face. In the void, there was a crackling sound. Everything around was still. Only the loud sound of the slap could be heard. 9 times in a row. Blood had long since seeped out of the corner of Xiaoyu's mouth, but her upper body was perfectly straight, not daring to move in the slightest. This most primitive form of punishment seemed to be very strange to be used on a great cultivator. However, this scene was extremely shocking. One had to know that a person like Xiao Yu could destroy the entire ancient Shu mainland by himself. If she had personally attacked Sumo just now, Bu Shinkong might not even have had the chance to arrive. However, in front of Bu Shinkong, she was really just a servant, a lowly servant. His cheeks were purplish red, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. However, there was not even a hint of resentment in Xiao Yu's eyes. It wasn't that she didn't have any resentment in her heart, but she didn't dare to show even the slightest bit of it. Eldest Prince, please calm down. First Prince, please calm down. I know I was wrong, I won't dare to do it again, I won't dare to do it again. Xiao Yu's face was full of tears as she kept kowtowing and begging. As a matter of fact, Bu Shinkong was not moved at all. This was because he knew too well what kind of person this little servant by Qi Wuhui's side was. This seemingly harmless little servant girl was Qi Wuhui's most capable subordinate in the Pure Land. Those 9 slaps and a few drops of tears were nothing at all. Did my junior sister ask you to come? Bu Shinkong stopped hitting her and asked coldly. Yes. Xiao Yu answered hurriedly, however. Eldest Miss only asked me to save the previous puppet, she didn't ask me to deal with Sumo. Xiao Yu knew how to avoid Qi Wuhui. Oh! Bu Shinkong sneered and then said meaningfully, Xiao Yu, it seems like you're getting more and more daring. You actually dare to make decisions behind your eldest Miss back? Just now I didn't manage to save the puppet, and Sumo injured my 5-colored divine Ho. Therefore, in a moment of anger, I summoned the faceless woman to take revenge on Sumo. Xiao Yu answered. Bu Shinkong didn't dwell on it any further. Xiao Yu, it doesn't matter if you made the decision on your own, or it was your eldest Miss' order. I don't want what happened today to happen again. Back then, I might not have made myself clear. I told you not to touch Sioux City for 1,000 years. Did you think that I wanted to protect the children of the chaotic god? Bu Shinkong's voice was even colder. Xiao Yu lowered her head and didn't dare to speak. The Bu clan was all cruel and merciless. Bu Shinkong, Bu Xiyun, and Qi Wuhui, the 3 of them had a complicated relationship. Although Xiao Yu was loyal to Qi Wuhui, she definitely didn't dare to say anything wrong in front of Bu Shinkong. Otherwise, she might be directly turned into a puppet. Of course, I want to protect Sumo, not anyone else. Bu Shinkong's voice was slightly heavy, therefore, there are still 500 years. I hope that Sumo is safe. Especially you guys, don't even think about touching Sumo in the next 500 years. After 500 years, it's up to you to decide where you want to go. However, if you touch Sumo in the next 500 years... Bu Shinkong paused, then sneered. Xiao Yu, tell my junior sister that I will bring my puppet army to East Yi's 3rd sector's Amethyst Palace for tea. Amethyst Palace? Xiao Yu's body shook when she heard Bu Shinkong's words. Because Amethyst Palace wasn't in the Pure Land, it was the center of East Yi's 3rd sector. It was East Yi's 3rd sector, the core of 1,000 lesser realms. To be more precise, it was Qi Wuhui's ultimate abode. Tianfu City was only a small palace. Xiao Yu had never been to Amethyst Palace. Moreover, as far as she knew, Qi Wuhui would never allow people like Bu Shinkong and Bu Xiyun to step into Amethyst Palace. Did you hear me clearly? Bu Shinkong said. Huh. Xiao Yu was a little dazed just now, she quickly said. Don't worry, First Prince, this servant will definitely pass on the message. If there's a next time, you'll be the first to become a puppet. Bu Shinkong said slowly. Yes. There won't be a second time. Xiao Yu kowtowed again. After a while, there was no reply. Xiao Yu didn't dare to raise her head immediately. In fact, Bu Shinkong had already left after saying that last sentence. His gray robe fluttered even though there was no wind. Bu Shinkong's steps were slow, he was mysterious and powerful. When Xiao Yu raised her head, everything around her was hazy and empty. Where was Bu Shinkong? Xiao Yu got up and wiped the dried blood at the corner of her mouth. At the same time, a dark light flashed in her eyes. She couldn't afford to offend Bu Shinkong, but First Miss wasn't someone to be trifled with either. Why did Bu Shinkong keep protecting Sumo? This was what puzzled them. There was something fishy about this matter. However, Xiao Yu didn't think too much about it at this time. She glanced at the water mirror beside her and sighed heavily. Then, she turned around and disappeared into the void. She had to return to Tianfu City to report on her mission. Meanwhile, on the Chu family's lake, Sumo had completed her final breakthrough. Chapter 579. The Chu family Tianhu. The battle intent dissipated. The ancient Shu cultivators present witnessed Sumo's advancement. At this moment, the demonic boat was spinning like a top, but Sumo was still floating in the boat. The sea of demonic flowers had gradually closed. It was only a few feet in radius. Time seemed to have stopped. Many of the grand cultivators present were watching Sumo's last moment. They held their breath and watched intently. The demonic boat spun and rolled up the last of the sea of flowers. At this moment, Sumo suddenly moved. He formed a hand seal in front of his chest. Whoosh, sea of destruction. Sumo's eyes snapped open, and then he let out a roar. Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant, the sea of demonic flowers suddenly disappeared. The demonic boat turned into a black light and flew into Sumo's core sea. Layers of spiritual energy instantly rippled from Sumo's body, spreading out like water ripples. However, the spiritual energy did not harm them at all. Instead, it made all the cultivators present feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. Ah, someone exclaimed, his face full of surprise. Many cultivators had been injured in the battle just now, but at this moment, they began to recover because of the impact of Sumo's spiritual energy. There were even cultivators who stood there in a daze, then turned around and flew away. They were all at the bottleneck of their advancement, but the sea of destruction intent on Sumo instantly gave them an epiphany. They had to go into seclusion immediately. It should be noted that not every cultivator had such a great fortuitous opportunity. Seeing a cultivator advance to the Sea of Destruction realm was something that could only be encountered by chance. Different cultivators had their own gains. Sea of Destruction realm. Sumo's black robe fluttered in the wind. The brilliance in his eyes was as deep as the sea, unfathomable. This time, his advancement could be said to have benefited a lot. Everyone present was a beneficiary. Congratulations to the Demon King. Congratulations to the Demon King. Gan Tianqing and Yu Wuji were the first to congratulate him. They were Celestial River cultivators, so in their excitement, they used the old name of Celestial River. However, he didn't expect that all the cultivators from the Gu family, the Chu family, and the Xianmeng family would kneel on the ground. Congratulations to the Demon King for advancing to the Great Tao. They congratulated him from the bottom of their hearts. It was a thunderous roar. From then on, the name of the Demon King spread throughout the ancient Shu. Strength decides everything. Everything in front of him was the best proof. The cultivators of the ancient Shu continent indeed submitted to the strong. See Annihilation Realm. That was definitely an existence that could dominate the entire ancient Shu. For the cultivators of the ancient Shu, Sumo never said that she wanted to unify the ancient Shu, but the scene in front of them was already what everyone expected. Once the realm was reached, everything would fall into place. This was something that Sumo had long understood. Therefore, he had always been constantly improving himself. That way, many problems would be easily solved, and he would not be troubled. Thank you all for protecting me. Sumo cupped his hands toward all the people around him. She was in a high position, but she was not arrogant. Sumo's words resonated deeply with the crowd. Demon King, what should we do with the rest of the Een family of the Cold Mountain? Yuwuji asked with a bow. In fact, Yuwuji wanted to show his attitude. It was because she knew that she had to strike while the iron was hot. Now, she was the Union Master of the Xianmeng continent. Her attitude was enough to let the cultivators of the Xianmeng continent understand that Sumo was the one in charge of everything. Mobilize the army of the Xianmeng continent to surround them without attacking them, Sumo said lightly. In the Cold Mountain, if there are any cultivators of the deity burial state, they will be executed. The cultivators of the mortal dust state will be allowed to submit to the Een family. However, from now on, the Een family will be reduced to the mortal dust family. If there are any more cultivators of the deity burial state, they will be killed. What Sumo said was tantamount to announcing the future of the Een family. The Een family would be restricted to the mortal dust family forever. This punishment was quite severe. Yes. Yuwuji didn't hesitate at all and answered directly. Then, she turned to Long Wanqing and cupped her hands, saying, Union Master Long, thank you for your hard work. Lead the cultivators of the Xianmeng continent to go first. I will contact the ancient Shu Peak and send the eternal clans to besiege the Cold Mountain. No one of the Een family can escape from the ancient Shu continent. Yes. Rest assured, Union Master Yu. Long Wanqing cupped his hands and then bowed to Sumo. Please rest assured, Demon King. Then, Long Wanqing waved his hand. Long Yu, Long Gu, and over 1,000 cultivators of the Xianmeng continent disappeared into the void along with Long Wanqing. The army of the Xianmeng continent passed through the territory of the Chu family and headed straight for the Cold Mountain. There were only a few swordsmen left in the Een family. By now, the mortal dust family under the jurisdiction of the Chu family had received the news and arrived one after another. Unfortunately, what they saw was the devastated Chu family. An eternal clan was almost wiped out. This was something they had never dared to imagine before. Then, all the cultivators of the Chu family, led by Chu Wendao, knelt down in front of Sumo. Now, there were only about 20 cultivators of the Chu family on the Tianhu Lake. They were all cultivators above the deity burial state. It was expected that there were still some cultivators who had survived the disaster on the north-south gazing lake. However, there were probably no more than 100 people of the Chu family still alive. We pay our respects to the Demon King. We, the Chu family, are grateful to the Demon King for his kindness. From now on, we are willing to serve the Demon King as our master, and we hope the Demon King will grant us this favor. Chu Wendao said loudly. Hee. Sumo smiled faintly. I'm the elder of the Xianmeng continent. If you join the Xianmeng continent, you will be my subordinates. Cultivationist Chu, you and I fought, and I won. So, is the marriage still valid? Sumo looked at Chu Yunnan with a smile. At this moment, Chu Yunnan knelt behind Chu Wendao. Now, he was no longer as high-spirited as when he was in the Gu family, because the entire Chu family was gone. In theory, they were not qualified to marry into the Gu family at all. Sumo was at the Sea Destruction realm, and she had already given him enough face by calling him cultivationist. Thank you, Demon King. We will follow the arrangements of the Demon King. Chu Yunnan's eyes were filled with tears. He understood that this was definitely a gift from Sumo to the Chu family. The Chu family will never forget the Demon King's kindness. Chu Wendao kowtowed and thanked her. We are all in the Xianmeng continent, so it should be so. The Chu family will prosper again. Everyone, you have to work hard to rebuild the country, Sumo said with a smile. The members of the Chu family naturally agreed, and then dispersed to check the specific situation of the north-south gazing lake. Humph! Sumo waved her hand. Looking again, the majestic Dracophant soul-devouring beast that had been standing next to her instantly shrank, and then returned to its adorable appearance. Humph! The little fellow jumped happily and jumped onto Sumo's shoulder. This time, it and Sumo were the big winners. At this moment, the other members of the Gu family, as well as Yu Wuji's left and right guardians, Zhong Yulin and Hua Jianlan, were helping the Chu family deal with the funeral affairs. In the void, there were only 3 people, Sumo, Gan Tianqing, and Yu Wuji. The ancient Shu continent is ours. Yu Wuji asked. Sumo and Gan Tianqing nodded gently. When we return to Xianmeng, I will propose to add a chief alliance leader above the 5 alliance leaders. Yu Wuji said with a smile, Demon King, don't decline when the time comes. Sumo nodded and smiled. Everything is up to you. However, I won't stay in the ancient Shu continent for too long. The ancient Shu continent will be under the control of the 2 of you. What are you going to do next? Yu Wuji asked. Sumo said, after everything here is done, I want to return to the White Bone continent. White Bone continent. Yu Wuji was stunned. In her mind, the White Bone continent was a soulless land, not worth mentioning at all. Hearing Yu Wuji's puzzled tone, Sumo couldn't help but sigh. There is still something very important on the White Bone continent for me. I want to go back and take a look. Sumo had been away from the White Bone continent for too long. Chapter 580. In the Battle of the Cold Mountain, the Yin family and those who resisted were all wiped out. The rest all submitted to Xianmeng. However, the Chu family and the Yin family had a feud for generations. After that, the west of the Cold Mountain was artificially blocked by Xianmeng and became a forbidden land. Xianmeng even sent practitioners at the breaking world level to guard it for a long time to avoid any dispute. The land in the south of the Cold Mountain was pacified. In the end, Long Wanqing settled everything and led the army of Xianmeng to return to Xianmeng's ancient Shu Peak from the Cold Mountain. Sumo, Yu Wuji, and the others didn't go back immediately. The Chu family still had some affairs that needed their help to deal with. More importantly, under the auspices of Sumo, Gu Xing and Chu Fei finally became cultivation partners. On the day of the wedding, the 2 families were happy. Xianmeng also sent messengers to bring gifts. This wedding dispelled some of the bloody atmosphere in the south of Sichuan. After the fighting, life went on. Everything was settled. 3 months later, Sumo, Yu Wuji, Gan Tianqing, Gu Yazi, and the others returned to the ancient Shu Peak. This time, not only did the other 4 alliance masters of Xianmeng, led by Jiang Yuntian, come out to welcome them, but almost all the practitioners above the breaking world level of Xianmeng were there. The recovery of the Cold Mountain was a grand event for Xianmeng. Moreover, the battle in which Sumo wiped out the Yin family had shaken the whole ancient Shu Peak and shocked everyone. The practitioners of the Extermination Sea realm. They were definitely the king-level existences in the ancient Shu continent and even the whole Pure Land. Xianmeng welcomed the return of Sumo and the others with the highest standards, which was not excessive. After that, Gu Yazi stayed at the ancient Shu Peak to cultivate according to the previous agreement. Gan Tianqing, as a member of the Gu family, became the 6th alliance master of Xianmeng. Originally, Xianmeng wanted to recommend Chu Wendao as the alliance master. However, he was tactfully rejected. There were many things waiting to be done in the Chu family, and he no longer had such thoughts. He only said that he was willing to serve the Demon King. He was willing to follow the saddle and follow the horse. That was why he let it go. Since then, the ancient Shu Xianmeng had 6 alliance masters on duty. In the end, under Yu Wuji's suggestion, Sumo was elected as the alliance master. As the leader of the alliance, he could be said to be above everyone else. The Xianmeng's break world elders were all controlled by him. The great attack to recover the 3 south regions, and the Sea Annihilation realm. Therefore, no one questioned Sumo's position as the alliance master. Not only did they not question it, but all the cultivators of Xianmeng cheered. A Sea Annihilation alliance master. This caused the entire Celestial Alliance's level to rise. All the cultivators of Xianmeng understood that the ancient Shu continent had been completely unified. In the entire Pure Land, aside from Tianfu City, they would be the absolute overlord. One day, maybe they could rush out of the Pure Land and go to other small worlds. Controlling the ancient Shu, Sumo's goal was achieved. Therefore, Sumo only stayed at the ancient Shu mountain for a short month, and then he said goodbye to the people of Xianmeng. The 6 alliance masters of Xianmeng all came to see him off. Sumo smiled and cupped his hands. Everyone, take care. Before, he had already told Yu Wuji and Gan Tianqing. They were naturally in charge of ancient Shu's matters. At the same time, he told them to cultivate as soon as possible and restore their strength. After 500 years there would be a fierce battle. Everything had not really started yet. The people of Xianmeng were reluctant to leave, but after Sumo cupped his hands, he smiled faintly, and then just took a step forward and disappeared without a trace. The Sea Annihilation Realm was already in existence that the cultivators of Xianmeng couldn't understand for the time being. Yu Wuji and Gan Tianqing couldn't help but look at each other and smile bitterly. Cultivate. Otherwise, they didn't know if they could be of help to Sumo in the future. 500 years was not long for samsara travelers of the 3 realms like them, but it was not short either. During this time, they could completely improve their realm. The Sea Annihilation Realm was not far away for them. After leaving the ancient Shu mountain, Sumo directly rushed to the nearest transmission formation. Now, Sumo was the alliance master of Xianmeng. He had the strongest mark of Xianmeng, and even the highest authority. Therefore, all the formations on the ancient Shu continent could be used at will. Sumo directly chose to teleport to the northern region of the ancient Shu continent. In the northern region of the ancient Shu continent, he could cross the Heaven Trench and directly reach the Bone continent. In the Pure Land, the only way to travel between continents was to cross the Heaven Trench, because there were no transmission formations between the 3 continents of the Pure Land. But now, Sumo was already at the Sea Annihilation Realm. That was a realm where he could break through the barrier and reach another world. Therefore, the Heaven Trench was nothing in Sumo's eyes. Back when Sumo crossed the Heaven Trench for the first time from the Bone continent to the Chaotic God continent, he felt that the Heaven Trench was as vast as the sea. But now, the Heaven Trench was just a long river in his eyes. Moreover, when Sumo meditated, the entire Pure Land could appear in front of him. The Pure Land, with the bitter Wheel Sea as the heart. There was a city on the sea and another city under the sea. The 3 continents, each in a crescent moon, were not connected to each other. But only the Bone continent was in the shape of a person lying on his side. Therefore, the Bone continent was different from them. Sumo could not help but smile. One of the reasons he returned to the Bone continent this time was to find out the origin of this continent. After all, the white bone heart was still in his hands. Standing at the edge of the northern region of the ancient Shu continent, Sumo looked at the rolling Heaven Trench, his gaze distant. At that moment, he could clearly see the rise and fall of the mountains on the Bone continent. He could even see through the 3,000 Buddha lotuses that were suppressing the Bone continent. Whoosh, Sumo took a deep breath. For a moment, he seemed to be a little timid. However, Sumo did not choose to cross the Heaven Trench immediately. Instead, he leaped forward diagonally. The scene in front of him instantly changed. In front of him was a completely unfamiliar world. It was a vast expanse of white like a snowy plain. The cold wind was light and piercingly cold. Where was that? But that feeling only lasted for a moment before disappearing. But that was the first time Sumo saw that world. He was sure that it was not the Pure Land. Another step, and the scene changed again. It was a world as black as ink, but there were lights in the distance. There seemed to be countless flying spirits in the air. Just like before, they instantly disappeared. One step, one world. As expected, Sumo thought, but his footsteps did not stop. More importantly, he could not stop. Because those worlds would soon vanish. They were not stable. 49 steps by 7. He had to return to the soul storage altar to take a look. After all, it had been another 200 years. But this time, with every step he took, he could glance at the spacetime he passed. 49 spacetimes, 49 worlds. Even though he had recovered all of his memories, Sumo was still extremely shocked. What kind of existence was the soul storage altar? How many spacetimes was it from him? If not for that wondrous footwork, he would not have been able to reach the soul storage altar. Whoosh! At this time, Sumo had landed in front of the soul storage altar. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.